It's time to roll into 2021 here with the Fake 500 as the month of May virtually will come around here once again with the Wicked Energy Gum Fake 500 presented by Indy Racing Images opening practice. It's often said that the Indy 500 is a race that's not all about just the race, but about redemption. Losing it all and then coming back and winning it all. And right now, Chris Peterson's looking to do that as he's the first car on track here in opening practice with a time of 48.115. But in the grand scheme of things, we're going to have 60 drivers this year try to qualify for the Fake 500. Last year, we saw it all on pole day. Brian Blackford's disqualified run on an attempt to save fuel in turn 3 and 4. He jumped out of line on his 9th place qualifying effort and had to run on bump day. And then on bump day, we saw Kevin Click go out early, put himself in the field. And then, at the very last minute, your Indy 500 iRacing official champion, Joshua Chin, went out and set a lap that put him in the field in 28th overall. And it bumped Kevin Click out of the field, but the hope wasn't over for Kevin Click. A late drop out of the Fake 500 put Click on the back row, and then due to a couple driver sellouts and driver buying seats, he started 29th, and he didn't lead a single lap until the last one to pick up the inaugural Fake 500 championship. Already joining out on the track right now is Dallas Breeze. Last year made the Fake 500. Correction, he did not make the Fake 500. He ran in the Patriot 100. Dave Bodio, Carl Burke, Hank Silver, Dano Lindsay, all going to highlight the rookies here today, and then of course the veterans. Last year's second place qualifier and middle of the front row starter James Tiernan, who thought he had a chance to win the Fake 500, crashed on lap 199 going into turn number 3 as Kyle Suzoski looked to the outside and spun. Joining them, Tyson Landis started on the outside of the front row. Last year had internet difficulties and dropped out of the race. He is going to look to improve on his effort, and already to the top is Dallas R. Breeze with a time of 47.846. That is what is the current fast time of practice. If you're wondering what that is in terms of miles per hour, it's a nice lap of 188.103. Welcome to opening day coverage of the Indy Racing Images opening practice of the 2021 Wicked Energy Gum Fake 500.
Alongside the booth tonight is Baden Stewart. That was Abe Scott, your race director for this year's edition of the Wicked Energy Gum Fake 500 here from the virtual Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It is the first major chance for drivers to prepare for this event, to get used to the cars, get used to the changes that have come throughout the builds throughout 2020 into 2021, and prepare for what's expected to be an action-packed event here. Baden, a lot to discuss through the next few hours as drivers hitting the track for the first time all together for what's expected to be a big event this year.
Oh, absolutely. It's going to be a lot of fun. That's the thing that I'm excited about. We're going to see who's been putting in the work here over the last couple of months, getting ready for this deal. But we're gonna. This is the first day. You can't fully judge what the month's going to be off this, but you're going to have an idea today of who's really put in the work and who's going to be strong and who's going to have a long week ahead of them here.
Yes, absolutely. There were a lot of veterans in this field this year, 41 who competed in the first ever Fake 500. 19 rookies, however, are also amongst the field. It's a massive field of competitors looking to try and lock themselves in to the main show. Among the notable rookies include this year's rookie drivers vote favorite, I should rather say, Chase Rodman, the iRacing World of Outlaws, NOS Energy Drink, and Morton Buildings late model and sprint car World Championship announcer and rear road announcer. Among the other drivers, Hank Silver from Dirt Vision, as well as the 2020 Lionheart Racing Series champion for its IndyCar division, and Adam Blocker. It's a stacked field of rookies, but also a stacked field of veterans as talked about, who are all trying to make this year's event and try and carry a ton of speed, which can be tricky when it comes to the Brickyard.
Yeah, these guys have their work cut out for them. There's no doubt about that. And last year proved it. This is one of the toughest deals on here. It really is. But I think these guys are ready. And If they're not, you're going to find out real quick.
Absolutely. Currently, drivers are on the racetrack setting 47.4s in terms of the lap totals around the circuit. Bobby Rafferty from Jim Beaver Esports is currently at the top of the board in the early going. Drivers will have the next 3 hours throughout this opening practice session sponsored by Indy Racing Images to prepare for what's expected to be an eventful week. There are 3 total practice sessions before pole day and bump day taking place this weekend, then 2 more practice sessions before the Crescent Donut Patriot 100 the night before the 500 and the fake 500 overall. Now, on top of things, your expectations for an event such as this, Baden, because it was a big event in 2020.
You know, we're going to have to see how it plays out. You know, we got a lot of guys that are busy here, but I think that the anticipation's going to ramp up. The closer you get to qualifying day, the tenser everything gets, which is really, really cool to see happen. It's just, there's something so cool about it. You know, you see throughout the first week, guys are trying to avoid tows. They're not worried about traffic. They're worried about qualifying speed. They want to make those 4-lap runs, and that's all they're focused on. And it occurs naturally. It's so cool to see that happen, where, you know, it ends up being the first week is mainly designated for preparing for qualifying, because everybody understands that's the first step. You've got to get through that. It doesn't matter how good you are in dirty air. It doesn't matter how good you are in traffic. You have to make the field. And so all these guys, they almost get tunnel vision on that. And then you see in the second week, then your packs start to emerge. Then you're seeing a lot of tow speeds. You got guys working to see what they can find in traffic. But right now, guys are just trying to get comfortable. But before the end of the day, we're going to see some guys trying to push and see what they can get for a qualifying run here. It's going to be really fun to watch.
We saw that a little bit here with Kevin Click when we interviewed him earlier last week. He simply said his biggest challenge and his biggest goal is just to make the Fake 500 field. It's not to win the race. Don't forget, I mean, this is the 2020 Fake 500 champion that we're talking about. His goal was just to simply make the race. Last year, we saw it. He went out there kind of early in his qualifying run, ran a 47.177 his first lap, got faster on his second, ran a 47.127, and then even faster on his final 2 laps into the 47.0s, the low 47.0s. And he put an average speed down of 47.093, which is 191.11 miles an hour. And that wasn't good enough to get him in the show. Now, we compare that right now to Skylar Brown, who just went even quicker, a 47.165. That's an average speed of 190.81. That's not even going to be fast enough to get him into the show if we go off last year's time. Now, obviously, the weather this year, a little bit warmer here in practice, 77 degrees. Track temps a scorching 111 degrees with a 5-mile-an-hour wind out of the west. As I mentioned, that Skylar Brown's going to get loose, and he's going to spin and hit the wall on turn number 1, crash down the racetrack. But going back to what we were just talking about there and what you just said, it's simply just make the field. I mean, that's going to be the biggest goal for a lot of these guys. And I think last year we saw a lot of people that we thought were going to be comfortably in the show not make it. Guys that showed a lot of practice speed. You know, you look down, Aaron Roofs, I think, is going to be one of my guys to keep an eye on. He's one of the faster guys in the field. We saw he had good practice speed. He had good single car speed. Couldn't catch a break with the weather and when he went out. And unfortunately, he qualified 48th out of the 72 car field last year. And his average speed was 190.75 miles an hour. So, I mean, just a lot of good talent here. There's going to be a lot of good talent that goes home. I mean, that's just what the Fake 500 is. It's what makes this event as spectacular as it is. These guys are going to put in a whole week's of effort here just to make the race. And then once they make it or don't make it, they're going to put another week in getting ready for their respective race.
And you see it in practice, but it becomes so evident on pole day how tight this field really ends up being. These guys, there's a lot of guys that do work together in this, because the more data you have, the more it benefits you, just like real Indianapolis. So you see the field end up really, really tight. So then it's down to you to find every little tiny bit you can, and the difference between making the race and going home is so incredibly narrow. You can't put a wheel wrong, and that's what makes this so intense and so good.
Absolutely. I think we may have just had it there on the broadcast. Maybe if we can get our ability to go back there and look at it. We just saw James Kieran's spin coming out of turn number 1 all by himself. I mean, This is a guy that qualified second last year. I mean, he was one, I believe, thousandths off of pole from last year's pollster, which was Parker Kligerman. I can pull it up here real quick and tell you.
Yep.
But, I mean, he's going to lose it coming out of turn one. And I think that's going to kind of show you. I mean, these guys are trimmed out. They're looking for every ounce of speed that they can get. And, I mean, that's kind of a weird spot to spin out. We don't typically see that. We see guys spin out kind of on entry or midway through the turn. He's just going to lose it on exit here. It's just going to step out from underneath him. He's going to try to catch it. He can't. He's going to spin out, slap the nose off the wall, and come to an end. If that happens on pole day or bump day, that's a ruined run. That's one of his 3 attempts for that day used up, one of his 6 total. So, I mean, you got to find the balance between speed and handling. And what's fast is not comfortable here at Indianapolis, and you run that risk every single turn.
And the other interesting thing on top of all that is you have to have a very, very solid notebook when it comes to this deal. That's going to be the tough thing for the rookies. They have some serious catching up to do here. These guys do have a notebook from last year, and it's very, very, very important with this deal to pay attention to the weather alone. You have to be prepared for whatever conditions you're going to get thrown, and they're constantly changing. I don't think there's an event on here that is more weather dependent, more reliant on your data from different conditions alone. You have to watch the weather, and it comes down sometimes on bump day. It comes down to a cloud. One good cloud for you can make or break it. The temperatures are that important here.
I think you hit it right on the head. In the weather for this practice, 77 degrees is the air temp at the moment. 111 degrees is currently your track temp Fahrenheit. In some day, May 18th, 2020, he won. But on top of things, keep in mind, you'll have plenty of changes which has come to the car over the past year or so on the service that has seen some various changes to how it handles. And on top of things, 50% fuel limit for this year's event. And how much will that change how you build a car, especially for the balance of these Lotus 79s?
Really, I think we expect to see that to the fuel limit. I expect that to see some forcing of some strategy, which we'd really like to see. That'd be really, really interesting to see. I think Zane made a very good call there with that idea. I believe that's gonna throw an interesting new dynamic into the race. As far as the changes, we're gonna have to see what that does for the car. We're going to see if guys can find some speed with the changes that have been made over the last couple of builds here. But all in all, today is about getting comfortable, getting your chops back, and remembering where you need to put that wheel every single lap. And you'll see guys turn lap after lap after lap today. And that's another cool thing about it. You see a massive number of laps turned because you have to. You have to make sure you can be that consistent every single run. And it ends up being so cool the way that transpires, because we get used to the way Indianapolis works today. Guy will go out, make a couple laps, and then the car goes back to gasoline alley, and it goes down to shock data. With this, guys understand they just have to be smooth. They have to find every little bit they can get, and so they spend the whole time searching.
Keep in mind now the driver at the top of the board is Skylar Brown at the moment after he just set a 47.001. That's a 191.485 mile an hour lap time. And of course, you mentioned all of that preparation to be able to get all that speed in. And what are how much weight really overall do you put in as a driver to how you do on the opening day of practice? And how much stress does that put in to if you're, say, 0.6 off, like some of the drivers early on?
I don't think it's something that I don't believe it's something that you need to be in panic mode over. If you put yourself in panic mode, you're going to end up behind the 8 ball. That's just not a good mentality to have. And that'll be something that we talk to some of these guys throughout the day here. We'll have some time. We'll talk to some guys, get their take on that. But today you just want to make sure you're smooth. You want to make sure you're consistent and you're close. You've got the time. you don't want to be in panic mode. You don't want to have that mentality of I'm already behind the 8 ball, because when you already have that stress, it's just going to compound. And that's a mindset that's going to be really hard to overcome. You don't want to get in that mindset. You really want to be, open-minded and confident in what you have. And at the end of the day, it is opening day. It's important, but you've really got to have that mindset of, we're here to build, and we're going to have it come pole day.
By the way, there was a crash. You may have noticed this puff of smoke. That was Bobby Rafferty, who had a crash down the back straightaway where he was going down the straightaway and tapped his right side tires up against the fence before flipping upside down. Now, that's one of the main things where with the sim world, physically, you potentially can be okay, but mentally, it can be something that can pop up, right, if you do it in a race, because there's no fast repairs for the main event. You can't afford to make those types of mistakes. And kind of what's your take on that, to where, of course, it's like a PES machine in practice. You break the car, you get a brand new car. But in the real world race, and of course, bump day, qualifying, etc., you don't get that PES machine. That PES machine is taped off.
Correct. And that's something that is interesting. These guys know that. So, the whole goal is to keep it out of the wall. Even if you just hit a button and you're back on pit road ready to go again, you don't want that. That's wasted time, and you've got to learn from every time that happens. That's one thing that is fortunate about this. You have that ability to learn from those mistakes. It's easier to find out where the edge is when you can overstep it, but it's truthfully counterintuitive to what you're trying to do. So, this is one of those events where you really want to maximize the track time that you have. So at the end of the day, it's no different. You don't want to be doing that, and that can be another thing that attributes to your mindset here. And that's a very, very big piece of the puzzle with this event. If you're finding yourself backwards, smacking the wall, lap after lap, run after run after run, that's going to get in your head, and you cannot have that kind of stuff pop up here leading into pole day. It's just not good for the mindset and the outlook going into qualifying.
Let's talk about some of the drivers who are currently among the drivers competing on the racetrack throughout this practice. We mentioned Skylar Brown at the top of the board. Chris Peterson, the first driver to come out, is now currently out of the car making some adjustments, was a 47.141. Then you have Bobby Rafferty, we talked about, from Jim Bieber Esports. James Tiernan was talked about a bit by Zane Scott. I want to go towards Zane here. Your thoughts on James Tiernan as a driver, as he is currently 4th quickest in practice and among the drivers who are putting some flyers in looking like qualifying trim so far early in this opening practice.
When we speak of James Tiernan, I think we look at the drivers' votes favorite. I think James goes under the radar. I think he's going to go under a lot of people's radars. Like I mentioned last year, he started second. He went 191.663 miles per hour. To put that in perspective, Parker Kligerman went on the pole with a 191.664. He was literally only 1,000th mile an hour slower than your pole sitter. And those two guys were basically 200s faster than third place, which was Tyson Landis. I think when we look at this bigger picture, I think James has got to be one of the favorites to win this race. Maybe the drivers are kind of overlooking him because he didn't, his name wasn't at the top of the leaderboard last year at the conclusion of the race, even though it was at the beginning. And as I said, that he goes 47.027, which is going to put him at 191.37 miles per hour. But he's a smart racer. He knows how to take care of his equipment. We've seen him in a lot of pavement sprint car races, and I think those cars are one of the hardest ones to drive on the entire iRacing service. And he's very good at saving his tires, managing his fuel until it's time to go, and then once it's time to go, he's able to keep it under control. He's able to push the car to its limit and not put it into the wall. And I think if you can do that here at Indianapolis in the race, you're set up for success. I think that's why Kevin Click credited his win to last year, was keeping it safe. But on pole day and bump day, you're pushing it to the limit, and you got to be able to keep that car under control. And I think James is one of those guys that can do that better than anyone. So if I had to say who my favorite would be to win this race, or at least be one of the front runners at the end, if he can keep it out of trouble, I think it's got to be James Tiernan. He's a setup wizard with this car. He's an Indianapolis fanatic, like us here at the board of directors, and I would definitely keep an eye on James Tiernan. I think he's going to be one of the bigger names to watch. And then I just kind of want to cycle back around to the name that you said there second, Chris Peterson.
Yep.
It's just Chris is one of those guys that he's here because he just loves Indy. He loves the race. I'm trying to go through some old data here just to pull it up, but Chris is one of those guys, he runs that he's got that pink car. I think this year, that was a car that he drove last year. It stands out. He's a fun guy to talk to. I'd keep an eye on him because I think he's coming back here in 2021 or late 2020, early 2021 here once we get into the new year with a little bit of vengeance. He wants that redemption, and a 47.141 is a pretty respectable time to have on the board currently. But I just want to kind of, cycle back around to some of the Dayton's you guys had mentioned earlier. Getting lost in what you're seeing, getting discouraged. And I think that's one thing, you look down this field, everyone's now in the 47-second bracket. There's a couple guys in the 48s. But, let's look down here. Daniel Lindsay, Shane Keiko, Dallas Breeze, those guys are kind of at the bottom of the speed charts currently. What separates them possibly from anyone else is whether or not you had a toe on the lap that's on the board. I mean, that's a big, big difference. You're talking without a toe, we're seeing guys, hit roughly. I mean, let's just look here. Let's go on board with Carl Burke going down the straightaway. He's at 192, 193 currently as he crosses the line. Tyson Landis is kind of behind Tyler Grafton. He's a little bit further behind maybe to get a draft, but he's going down 194 down the straightaway. So, and that's multiple miles per hour you can gain just by being in someone's draft. And that's enough to, give you a 4/10 swing just on one straightaway. So definitely, I think a lot of these guys need to maybe put the blinders on the standings and just get a feel for the car and what they think is fast and what they can.
I think you hit the nail on the head a lot of bit there, absolutely. And keep in mind as well, the wind also is something to think about. It's currently for these drivers gusting around 5 to 6 mile an hour to the west. Currently looking at some of the Roofco in-car cameras at the moment above the heads of some of these drivers, and the headwind, if you get it, ends up being big for the times as well, Baden, as well as if you get it in the corners because the wind can destabilize the car a lot in those corners.
Correct. Around here, airspeed is a big thing, not necessarily ground speed. When you're talking about the balance of the car, happy versus unhappy race car, you're talking about airspeed, and it's so big here. Especially, we're going to talk about qualifying a lot this week, a lot, because that's first step, and it's so tight, and qualifying is so tough for this deal. But when it comes to that, airspeed is so important. James Tiernan, fellow pilot, he knows all about it. And that's probably something that truthfully does benefit him here. The man has, we were talking about him earlier, really great racecraft. I mean, he has shown time and time again that he has really, really good racecraft. But I think his understanding of what this car is going to be doing through the air is going to help a ton. And when it comes to airspeed, that's the big thing here. You dive off into turn one with a headwind. Whatever you're feeling with the aero balance of the car is going to be exaggerated. But you go into three with a tailwind, you're going a whole lot faster with, truthfully, probably less downforce. You're probably not going to be able to make up enough speed with that tailwind to gain that downforce back, get your airspeed back to where it was going into one. So that's one of those battles that you're going to have here. And in qualifying, it's so tight, a gust of wind can be all it takes to throw you a massive curveball and make your bump day a lot more stressful.
We saw that last year here, Baden, and we'll bring Justin. I mean, we saw winds here in the high 10 miles an hour, 9-8 miles an hour. And we were seeing swings up to 12, 13 miles an hour while guys were doing their runs on the back straightaway. And one lap, they were, topping out at 194, and all of a sudden the wind would come to their back, and they're topping out at 198 down the back straightaway. So wind's definitely a big factor. This year, a little bit of change to the format or the weather settings. We're not going to see those big swings in wind. We're not going to see such a big swing in temperature because last year here when we saw the guys kind of get in the midday of qualifying, the temperature was too high, the humidity was too low, track temps too high for guys to even have a chance to even make the field. So that the settings have been changed a little bit to kind of even that field out a little bit, encourage more guys to go out there and use all 3 runs. And I found what I was looking for here with Chris Peterson. I'm going to bring it up. Chris sent a message to me earlier this month here and just wanted to say thanks for putting on this event. He said, "This means a lot to me, to my family. You know, we're big Indy nerds. You guys really know how to pluck that Indy nerd string." And he mentioned, and this is what I think is really big about, you know, this event. He said in his message, "I didn't even make the Patriot 100. I had to buy my way into it last year, but I had more fun with the whole experience than I've had anything else I've done in iRacing." And Chris is not the only one that said that. We've heard that from multiple people. I mean, Landon Castle, Brian Blackford, I mean, these big names in iRacing had all stated and have said in the past, you know, this event made them buy back into iRacing again. And we saw Brian Blackford, multiple time starter and driver in the NASCAR Coca-Cola series. It was Peak series when he ran it. But, you know, he said, "I haven't had fun last year." He said, "I haven't had fun in a while, and the Fake 500 is fun. I'm having fun." And that says a lot. You know, 41 veterans are coming back from last year's event. And, you know, like I just said, some of them didn't even make the Patriot 100. Some didn't make the Fake 500, but they're coming back. They're looking for redemption. They're going to try to get it. And, I mean, it's opening practice. Just think about what Chris Peterson's, you know, feeling right now. He's waited almost a whole year, you know, some chunk and change of some months, you know, but he's here on opening practice. He's excited for it. And, I mean, I'm just excited for the next 2 weeks.
And I want to give Chris Peterson a shout out. I know, being an Indy fanatic, he'll appreciate it. First on track. That's when Indianapolis was a month-long affair. That was huge. You know, there's some of the famous pictures of guys rolling down Gasoline Alley. They're in the car. The team's pushing them because they want to be first on track. And Chris got it done for the Fake 5. He was first on track, and that's worth something. That's one of those things that's really, really cool. And you know, he was evidently loaded up, ready to go, because he was on track before I even got the server. So big shout out to Chris for that. That's one of those things that's really, really cool to see guys excited, really just chomping at the bit and wanting to be first on track. So Chris Peterson, you're first on track for the 2021 Fake 500. Definitely a cool deal for him there.
I mean, you just got to think, did he go out and do that just so he can claim that title, being the Indy nerd that he is?
I hope so.
I mean, I would hope so too.
He deserves it.
He's been quick too.
The rest of the month, he's number 1. He was first on track.
Exactly. And keep in mind, you mentioned the Patriot 100 last year. He came away with the top 10, Zane and Baden. 6th place is where he came away with, just a couple seconds behind a race winner. Or in that one, that being Mike Rasmus from the Lionheart Retro Series. He's a very quick car, saying.
6th place, I mean, for those that didn't watch, you know, that race last year, 6th place was there. I mean, that give him 2 more turns, he could have been the leader. That race was decided by 1,000th of a second. The nose cone on the Lotus 79, that is what decided that race between Mike Rasmus and AJ Jobe. And then furthermore, to put a little bit of importance on the Patriot 100 itself, Mike Rasmus started the Patriot 100. He went on and won the Patriot 100. He got a last-minute call the day before the Fake 500. There was a late dropout. There was one more spot open. He got the call. He accepted it. And you know where he finished in the Fake 500? 3rd. He finished on the podium. So he went from winning the Patriot 100 to being an alternate for the Fake, getting in, and then running and finishing 3rd place. So for the guys that don't make the Fake 500, there's still importance in that Patriot 100 race. It's 40 laps, but I mean, that 40 laps can lead you to the 200-lap granddaddy of them all.
And the Patriot itself, that's a tough race. I mean, last year we saw, because it's where with the Fake, you've got to burn off some miles. You've got to get in your rhythm and ride for a while. You don't have any other option. It's a long race. That's how you have to run it. You can't be running the car as hard as you can on the edge for 500 miles. But the Patriot, 100 miles at Indianapolis, 40 laps, that goes by quick. And those guys were up on the wheel. That was an exciting race. And on top of all that, those guys were almost guinea pigs because it was something new for a lot of guys. We weren't even sure how it was going to race. We weren't 100% sure. We expected it to be good, but I think it shattered expectations. That was a tough race, and those guys put on a really, really good show. And again, they weren't even fully sure what they were going to be expecting for that. It was really, really cool to see those guys put so much heart into the Patriot as well. That was just a really, really good race. I thoroughly enjoyed that, and I'm excited for it again this year.
Got a spin on track. It's Tyson Landis in turn number 1. And again, maybe trying to play with setups here for the new field, because last year we saw guys run side by side for a lot of the Patriot 100 and the Fake 500 with no issue. Dallas Breeze just goes to the inside of him. Tyson's going to get a little loose, and then on exit it's going to step out. He's going to spin to the inside and then just going to tap the back of the car on the wall there. So, I mean, a mistake that we probably wouldn't have seen last year with full fuel or maybe no fuel, but this year we may see that. Guys just experimenting, trying to find out speed. And not only that, but this year the bar is set. Guys know what it's going to take to put themselves in the race, and now they have to make themselves even faster to secure their spot. So always comfortable watching Dave Bodio in turns 1 and 2 on my screen. Got a little bit loose, just kind of big bobble, and you can't do that. You can't afford to do that here at Indianapolis. And if you do that on a pull or bump day run, you might as well just scrap your run, because you're not going to be able to make it no matter what.
Still heroic.
Oh, it's very heroic. It's just not the best for speed.
It looks cool though.
It can be, yes, but it's not very time efficient. Let's put it that way once again, once you drift around these corners. But you have to be able to find the grip on top of things. You'd have to think, guys, right? And find that limitation, that balance. Because so many drivers talk about confidence in being able to carry speed around these corners. If you don't have the confidence, Baden, then you might lack the speed compared to some of the others, to be quite frank.
Absolutely, and that's in anything. That is in any race car, on iRacing, in real life. If you don't have the confidence in the car you're strapped to, you're already behind the 8 ball. You have to be able to tell yourself this will hold, it will stick. That's all it boils down to. At the end of the day, that's so important, and you've got to have that here. And when it comes to this deal, you just kind of have to tell yourself, no matter what, you've got to push the car as hard as you can and get everything you can out of it. You don't have an option.
Now, as some of these drivers make their way around the track, I want to talk about some of the teams that are taking part in this year's event. Jim Beaver Esports, we mentioned, has several drivers entered in this year's event. You also have Soda King Special with several drivers who are currently among your top competitors on the practice charts on the board. How big is it to have, first of all, teammates such as this, multiple of them, mind you, for a race such as this, to help you have that data to be able to turn laps?
No different than Indianapolis today. That data, that ability to talk to guys, maybe a teammate's found a little bit of something, and you can talk to him, and if you two can put your head together, you might be able to find something big. That's one of those things that's so incredibly helpful. Especially with a place that's truthfully as setup dependent as this. It's good to have that data to be able to talk to guys, get second opinions, and put heads together and come up with new ideas and things to try.
And on top of things, some of those drivers among those groups, we talked about those various different teams, are some big ones on top of. You had Door Bumper Clears, TJ Majors expected to return this year. You have Team Cities with several drivers who competed last year. We mentioned Mike Rasmus from Nexus Esports. We have Elbows Up SimSport with several drivers. Blackford has talked about from Slip Angle. Those are some massive teams mentioned there from various different aspects of the sim world, whether it's in the stock cars usually, whether it's in open wheels in general, or even in some cases crossing over from pavement to dirt. In some cases, going from dirt to pavement to show that speed.
And that's one thing I really enjoy about this. You see guys that mainly run sprint cars on here. They'll hop in and run this deal. You see sprint car guys run Indianapolis on here. It's a sad reality, but that's not That's not something that's common in Indianapolis anymore. It was commonplace in the glory days, but it's just not something that you see anymore. And you see guys come over from the NASCAR Pro Series like Blackford. You see a lot of that crossover, and that's what makes Indianapolis special. And you get to recreate that here. And that's one of those things that just strikes me as so cool about this event. You know, there's so many things that, being a huge Indy nerd, that I love about this. But that's one of those things that just strikes me as you know, capturing the spirit of what this is supposed to be.
100%. And when we talk about a lot of these drivers on the racetrack, some of them expected to take part in all this, Adam Blocker is among the drivers who got some votes for the driver's vote favorite after the rookie showcase orientation race. We're talking about a champion for 2020, a dominant 2020, mind you, in the Lionheart Racing Series. For him, by more than 100 points, was that championship. On top of it, you have Chase Rodman coming in and making his pavement debut. You have that mix of rookies who have won the major championships, but also have shown incredible speed for the first time in a pavement car.
And going back to in the same vein, going back to that spirit of Indianapolis, it's another thing that I love about this. You see guys that have flourished in all different types of racing on iRacing, and they come into this, and we have a lot of really cool, notable names. But when it comes to Indianapolis, no different than actually showing up in the month of May, it doesn't matter who you are. It does not matter. You have to be fast, you have to be sharp, and you have to be on your A game. It doesn't matter what your name is or who you are. You have to have the speed. And that's another thing that is so cool. Indianapolis doesn't care who you are, what you've accomplished, or what your name is. It demands the same thing of everybody. And Indianapolis is like the great equalizer. It doesn't matter who you are, it will put you in your place in a heartbeat. And it's just, we see that happen in the Fake 500, and I love it. It's so cool to me that we get to capture so many of those aspects of what makes Indianapolis so special and so important.
Absolutely. And I got an idea here. I see that he just joined Discord. How about we talk to the first man on track, Chris Peterson?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Drag him in here.
Chris Peterson, you got a copy?
Yes, sir. I can hear you.
Chris, a big Indy fanatic like yourself, just like us. First car on track here in opening practice, Indy Racing Images opening practice for the Fake 500. Was that intentional, or is that just something that happened?
I'd be lying to you if I said I wasn't watching the clock.
Chris, last year, not the qualifying effort that you were hoping for. You unfortunately didn't qualify for the Fake 500 or the Patriot 100. You were able to get a Patriot 100 ride, and you came home sixth in that race there. And what was, one of the more spectacular finishes I think we've seen in iRacing in 2020. What did you do this year? What are you going to do this year that's a little bit different from last year? And you don't have to tell us everything. Obviously, secrets are secrets. But what's the goal here to get yourself in the Fake 500 for the first time?
I have no secrets. I suck. It's pretty much obvious to everybody. I have no idea. I've tinkered with setups a little bit over the off season. I don't know that I've found any speed. Honestly, I think last year the wind just played havoc. Sometimes you get the luck of the draw and time of day for your qualifying spot. So I'm just hoping for maybe a little bit better luck or better wind conditions that don't play too much havoc with me as like they did last year. But yeah, if not, this will be my second attempt at my favorite race that I've failed to make it into.
Absolutely. And we mentioned this earlier in the broadcast. I don't know if you got it up. I always race with the broadcast subjects because I like to hear from getting talked about. But not sure if you were talking about, but like I said, you didn't make it. You're coming back again. This race, for many, I think may have kind of reboosted maybe a little bit of dying light on iRacing. And I'm not saying that's the case for you here, but is this event to you the one event every year that you're going to look forward to more than anything else? Just knowing that this is 2 weeks of fun that you get to have no matter what the outcome is?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you can pull up my my official racing record, and I don't do any hosted aside from this one, so you can tell how little racing I do throughout the year. So this was, this event really blew wind up my skirt back in May, and just really kind of fired me up to do it again. And I was tickled to death to see the invite come out a couple weeks back or back in November. So yeah, I'm just stoked to be here, man.
Absolutely, we can feel it. A little bit different this year. We're going to change how the weather is going to play out to maybe kind of calm down the rapid change there. So a middle to back draw in qualifying might not be a bad thing, but you think if you can get out early here on Saturday that you can put this thing in the show and lock yourself in on pole day?
That's the intent. I really don't want to have to drive on bump day. That was nerve-wracking. I've never had my heart beating quite as hard as it was for those 3 attempts last year on.
Absolutely, and we got the record 7 oval races in 2020 and only 16 road starts. So definitely what you said was true there. Not too big of a race around here like some of the others that are going to try to make the show, but we're honored that you're going to come out here. You're going to try to make the Fake 500 for again. Hopefully you can make it. We'd love to have you. You're one of the 41 veterans in the field. So we'll hope to. Is the pink zebra car going to stick around?
Yeah, unless somebody wants to pay me a whole bunch of money to change.
All right. Well, we're going to look forward to it here. We're going to let you get back to practicing without us talking in your ear there, but we hope to see you maybe get that early draw like you're hoping, get to see what you can do here on pole day. But thank you, Chris, and good luck here this year in the Fake 500.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
See you, Chris. Thank you.
That was Chris Peterson. Once again, your first driver out on racetrack for the Indy Racing Images opening practice. One of the air drivers currently taking part in practice. We talked about him and his teammates earlier on. Hank Silver was the driver who came in second in the rookie division for the driver's vote favorite after the orientation race. That was Hank Silver, and he now joins us now. Hank, do you have a copy, first of all?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Hank. And first things first, big event among the drivers getting ready for their first attempts here. You're one of 21 rookies in the field this year, or 19 rather, I should say. How does it feel, first of all, to be a part of this event?
It feels fantastic. When I kind of participated from a distance in the first one, I helped Braden McMahon with a paint scheme and a promo video, and that kind of set up. When I found out about the second annual, I was just like, there's no way I can't participate myself and become a part of something that's obviously just it's done so much to like the sim racing community recently. Just something fun to do, something to participate in, but something that like you can get a lot of other people involved with in a like secondary and tertiary level to like really expand on something that originally for me when I started in sim racing was just like something fun to do, but now it's something that like kind of changes my day to day.
Of course, for this event too, your teammates with Chase Rodman, and on top of that, you had Tyler Bachman jump on board for Tyler Bachman Enterprises. How did that all come about to bringing Chase on board to run on pavement, and for Tyler to come on board to bring his rear-world team that runs in go-karts and sprint cars from Sarver, Pennsylvania, to the real world?
It was really just kind of a shot in the dark. We figured out we wanted to put like the one car together and get something going for that, and participate and be a part of it and learn. But then we just kind of threw something out there to Tyler and made a phone call, and he was like more than excited to be a part of it. And then Jackson Steele, who is operating Steele Walker Motorsports, he wanted to be a part of it too, but he's newer to sim racing and kind of figured he's not as adept at the driving bit yet, so he contacted Chase. Chase is really excited to be a part of the deal as well, and we're familiar with each other, so we trust each other on and off the track a little bit more, so I think that adds to the it's always nice to do something new with someone else that kind of adds to the learning experience.
How has that learning experience gone to learn this car? Because it's known for being one where it has its dedicated community and devoted community, I should rather say, but it's also not the easiest car to build for.
This is definitely, I mean, this is one of the more fun cars that I've driven, but I had never, prior to setting up for this, I had never driven this car at all. So it was a real wild turn, because, I mean, I've driven the new Delara cars, so that's, I mean, you just step on the gas and it sticks to the ground. This one is definitely way more finesse, way more, like, feeling that you have to look for in the force feedback just to figure out, you know, when the car's going to start to kick out and how to, like, I don't want to say slide it, but, like, feel the car through the corner a little bit more, especially, like, on a qualifying setup where it's a lot looser and a lot floatier. It's a lot harder than a lot of other cars that I've driven in iRacing.
Of course, you have had the experience of racing an oval in this car in preparation for this event. We mentioned the rookie orientation race where you came second to Chase Rodman and what was a crazy finish there. How was that car, in your opinion, there? It was a different track, of course, with the 2 Mile Oval. But your thoughts on racing in a pack with this car and how you feel that knowledge and that experience could play into the Brickyard?
That race was honestly a really big, like, test for both of us, because we had never done any racing with these cars. We'd done some private practicing, kind of just the two of us out there, and, you know, exchange spots and run side by side for a while, but nothing compares to, like, a full pack of cars. You get the draft and get more of a feel for how the car is going to handle under that kind of pressure and how it maneuvers in that kind of traffic, as far as, like, avoiding things or trying to set the car up to make a pass. And it's not the same track, so it's obviously going to be drastically different when it comes down to it. But I feel like we learned a lot. We figured out we actually, like, we have a knack for it when it comes to racing. I think we got a lot to learn setup wise, but, you know, that'll just come in time, I think.
Curious on this as well. For those who do not know, you're also the field production specialist for Dirt Vision. What was kind of the reaction, and has been the reaction, to people over from Dirt Vision and your coworkers finding out you and Chase are, of course, both of you work in real life in some of the World of Outlaws broadcasts and whatnot, are taking part in this type of event?
It's been really good. All of the coworkers and like are really supportive of it. As a matter of fact, my boss, Brian Dunlap Performance, was so excited when he heard about the IndyCar project that he came on board to sponsor the midget for the night before, which, honestly, personally, for me, I'm more of a midget guy on iRacing anyway, so I'm pretty pumped to, like, be able to have someone who's involved with really cool real-life midgets be at the Chili Bowl in a couple of weeks, and he came on board to sponsor my midget for the night before the 500. And I mean, overall, just all my coworkers are all pumped about everything that we're doing. We all have a really good time, like, kind of working on some projects together. I ended up having Ross Weiss give me some footage that I could use for my promo video, and it's just been really, like, it's been a positive deal for our whole office, I think.
Now, a couple more questions. Still, lots of time to go for the Indy Racing Images opening practice. As a driver and as an organization, where's your focus kind of lie on for a practice such as this? Do you focus more on the qualifying? Do you try and focus on the racing setup? Or do you try and balance it out? How do you plan things out as a driver and team for this type of session?
Our initial plan was really just to, I mean, my thought was, let's go for the first practice prior to the rookie orientation. I think, you know, we were all kind of just sitting around discussing, okay, we want to plan for the long run. We don't want to be the guy that's going out there making hot laps, trying to just go fast one time and not be consistent. But, you know, after we did rookie orientation, we kind of figured out, you know, we may have the racing thing handled out enough that we are comfortable saying that, like, our primary focus in practice number one here is just kind of get a feel for where our qualifying setup compares to, you know, everybody else's lap times, just kind of get a general view of where we sit speed-wise, and then work from there. We've got 2 more practices, so I think our plan is, you know, get our qualifying dialed in and make sure we're in there, locked into the show, and then once we feel confident we can do that, then we can focus on our strategy.
Anything else you'd like to add before we let you get back to the car and back to practice?
I'd just like to thank my sponsors, Tyler Bachman Enterprises, Dunlap Performance, Walkipedia, Lethal Chassis. And you guys obviously for putting this together, being kind of hosting us to really put an awesome deal together.
Thank you very much for the time, Hank.
Thank you.
Hank Silver, once again, for Tyler Bachman Enterprises. He's looking to try and be among the rookies who qualify their way into the main show. Now, turn things over to you on your thoughts there, Baden, on what he had mentioned.
I think it's really cool to see so many guys, all excited about this. Just the fact that his whole workplace, and those are guys that deal with outlaw teams on the regular. They're familiar with top level motorsports, and to have all of those guys excited about it is really cool. That's really, really cool to me. And Brian Dunlap thinking that this is a really cool deal and wanting to get involved in some way. I mean, what more can you ask for? That's something that strikes me as really cool. And on top of all that, Mr. Silver's getting his sponsor reads down pretty good. That's important for something as highfalutin as this.
I was going to say, Brian Dunlap said on Twitter that sponsoring Hank Silver was the best $10 that he's ever spent. So,
I mean,
keep that in
can't
mind.
debate that.
Yeah, I think Ashley Sturmey also said if he wins, it's an extra $100 from sponsorship as well. So he could take home a pretty nice payday if he can make the fake 500 and then win it.
And looking at some of the times, they have some good relative pace. Top 10 so far in practice with right now a 47.2. That's only 0.2 off the quickest time. And that's not bad for your first time building for this type of car, mind you. Thing.
Yeah, absolutely not. I mean, that's a pretty decent time. And of course, we give all these guys a baseline setup because, I mean, these cars are just so weird. They're so hard to build for an oval. These are technically a road course car. They're not on iRacing to run ovals, but, just like everything else, people experiment. We got them on an oval. We're running them at Indianapolis as a 1979 themed Indy car. So we give out a baseline setup. That baseline setup's pretty good. I mean, it gets you in the ballpark, and then from there, you got to fine tweak it yourself. And right now, Hank's over at a 47.204. I'm going to go back and look at that lap here. And that's not on a toe either. I mean, he's pretty much by himself there all the way until he gets kind of to turns 3 and 4, so a slight toe. But I mean, that's a respectable time for Hank Silver. So I mean, the temps are kind of high. We're going to see speeds a little bit lower than we are possibly in qualifying when we get there, depending on what the weather is going to do. But I mean, they're in the ballpark already. And it's going to be interesting to see if they can, milk out those, extra tenths in time and speed to make the fake 500.
Absolutely. And so far, keep in mind, the driver at the top of the board still is Skylar Brown. It's been a quick session for him where he's been tough to beat. He has had the draft for some of these times, but when he hasn't had the draft, the times have been going anywhere from the 47.2s to the 47.5s. Relative consistency, if you're in Skylar Brown, where he is basically saying, if you look at his car, here, kitty, kitty, he's saying, here, top of the board. My kitty likes to be at the top of the board.
Skylar Brown's kind of, a jokester here, and I think, he's going to do things maybe to get under his opponent's skin a little bit and kind of, poke fun at everyone. But, he's doing it all in lighthearted spirits. I mean, this is a guy that, last year in the fake 500, had a solid car here. I'm looking at the starting board. He started, fourth last year at 191.609 miles per hour. That got him on the inside of the second row. He won the night before the 500, the 75-lap sprint car race, Indianapolis Raceway Park, or Lucas Oil, depending on how you want to call that. We're all about
IRP.
Here.
No, it's IRP.
So, Skylar Brown, he knows his way around our events, and he's definitely one guy to watch. We know he's got the setup speed to make the show. Is he going to be able to do that on a pole and bump day if required? Yet to be seen, but I'd say Skylar Brown's one of those people we should put at the top of our watch board as well.
Absolutely. And if you recall, early in last year's edition of the Fake 500, Skylar Brown was really fast out of the gate. He's had tremendous speed pretty well the whole time. It's been really impressive. Oh, and speaking of him, there is the Crawfordsville Puke Bandit, Skylar Brown. Hey, Skylar, how's the tummy feeling?
It's feeling great.
Feeling great. You're feeling good. You're running up front. You got cleaned out before this deal started, and you're fast. What are you thinking, bud?
I'm feeling good. It feels like May and it's cold outside, so I like that.
That's odd. It's very odd, ain't it?
It is,
The
but
coldest
I'll
May
take
I've
it.
ever seen.
Yeah, I'll take it though.
So you've got the speed. I think you're carrying speed from last year. You were really, really fast in last year's edition. You've continued that momentum. Are we trying anything new out of the box, or are we going to keep with whatever you've been doing that's so tried and true?
Right now, I just loaded in all the setups from last time, and just right now trying to just get just comfortable with driving it. They're kind of sensitive, so it's taken a second, but I've got the things adjusted. It's feeling good. I'm ready to win this year.
Oh boy, that's a tall claim. We've had some changes with this car. iRacing has changed a few things through the builds here. What have you felt any major differences, or has the thing felt relatively the same? Not many big changes so far.
I think it feels the same. I don't know. It's hard to tell with these temperatures right now. I think the track's like 118 degrees, so that's playing into it. It feels good. I'll probably have to do a little bit. It wants to snap on me. I think that's happening to some other people too.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I think it's just maybe got to get more comfortable in it, and it takes very fine movements in these cars. You got to be very precise and smooth, and you can't be messing around, or you're gonna lose it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing that's interesting. We've been kind of wondering. I figured you were just going to say I haven't felt anything different because my setup's that good, but a little more humble. I appreciate it. We were wondering what
the car isn't so humble.
We can see, but it's fast. It's real fast. That's one thing that we were wondering about, though. What differences are those changes going to make? Has the fuel limit changed anything for you so far? Have you been battling anything there? Or are you thinking about changing up some strategy according to that?
I know I've just been ripping qualifying right now. It feels like if a car is anywhere near me, it wants to be tight or loose. Like if a car's behind me, I'm snappy. If it's in front of me, I'm tight. The fuel's the same. I've run the same fuel as last year. I can run like the 4 or 5 laps, whatever it is, with the warm up.
Mm-hmm.
It feels good. I don't know. I'm just ready to get these practices in and be fine tuned for the big deal. I just hope I can make it. That's really what I'm worried about. It's kind of out of your hands, sort of with the weather and all that. So that's what's got me nervous, just getting in. And after that, hopefully I'm not nervous anymore. But last year I was a wreck.
You weren't the only one. I'm pretty sure just about everybody was. But you sound confident. You sound excited for qualifying. I don't think there's many people that actually are. So that's got to be a good feeling. That's got to be a really, really good feeling, as opposed to a lot of these guys that aren't sure what they're going to be looking at. They're on edge. You can tell some of these guys are a little bit nervous about what lies ahead, and for good reason. This is intense. This is a very tight deal, but you've got the speed, and you sound confident, and you sound excited, and I think that's going to go a long way here.
Yeah, when it comes to the race, I'm gonna have to settle down. Like last year, I was trying to show my speed and trying to be a hero, and I got bit by some netcode. Then I had to go to the back, and then I burned up my last life. I had 2 lives and burned them up in 40 laps. And there's only there's no resets this year, I guess. So
correct.
Yeah, I think if I qualify good, you'll see me going to the back and cruising for a little bit. Just be there at the end. It sucked to be out, in 40 laps and have to watch the rest of it, and then thinking of what I could have done differently. And this year it's going to be a little different. We'll be saving her for the end, I think.
Yeah, and that's how you have to run these races. You can't. It's not about going out and flexing. You got to be smart. It's all about the bronze, not the brass in this deal.
Yeah, for sure.
There's a lot of guys that I don't think run these longer format races that is a learning curve that they've got to get used to. And that's something interesting to see. A lot of the guys that run mainly sprint cars on here, it's a new way of running a race for them, and I think a lot of these guys have adapted really well to it, and it's really cool to see, even guys like you that are coming into this year with a notebook saying, here's what I did last year, here's what worked, here's what didn't work, and here's how I need to approach it as opposed to what I was doing last year. And that's interesting to see that notebook getting pulled out and these ideas.
I've got post-it notes. I've got post-it notes still from last year that had it. I had all the fuel written down, like how many laps could get me this, because like I've got all the stuff. I got all the tricks. So hopefully we can pull out some more. But I just want to make it to the race and qualify decent and not have to worry about it. Last year I went out kind of early. I think I was like the 13th car, and I sat down. I think I ended up 4th, but I didn't really have to worry at all. I just watched and relaxed. So that's going to play into it too when I go out. It's kind of out of your hands, but then again, when you get on the stage, you got to perform. So
absolutely, and that's massive as well. Just that good qualifying draw alone is a big make or break, and it can change the way the following week leading up to the race plays out. If you're sitting like you 4th, ready to go, you're good, you're set, you get to focus on race trim, and the mentality seems to change. You see, like, at the beginning, everybody's kind of tense. They're not sure. They're looking for speed. And it seems like the field splits in half. After poll day, the field splits in half. Half the guys are set. They're good. It is what it is. We're in the field. We're happy. We're fine. The other half are they're grinding. They're looking for everything they can find. And it's an intense day.
Yeah, and that just comes with this car that we don't normally run. This is like a one-off deal to me. I don't ever run these unless it's here, So I think that's really nice. We're not using a car that's used a lot, so people don't really know what to do or what to expect. So I like that. Kind of want to say add some realism to it, because the guys aren't out here running these cars all the time and know what it takes to be fast, and they got to kind of use their brains a little bit and trial and error, and that's that. To me, that's racing.
Oh yeah, and you see that in the mentality that everybody carries, the way guys are, the pressure, the intensity. You get that feeling of actually setting in line, ready to qualify. I had a lot of guys. I think John Steed last year said that he doesn't know if he's ever been that nervous in a real race car. You get that feeling, and there's a lot of guys here that are experiencing that, setting in line, waiting to qualify, understanding that they have to put every wheel right. And it's cool to get to see guys experience that and understand how insanely nerve-wracking that is.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I hate about racing is how nervous I get. Like, even in a real car, I think sim racing, I get way more nervous, which was weird. Last time for qualifying, my foot was shaking the entire time. Like, it took everything for me to keep my foot planted and not let it off the floor. It's an awesome feeling, and it's a bad feeling, but it's great whenever you're done and everything goes good. Like, you're on top of the world. I love it.
Oh yeah, it's rewarding. But when you're sitting in line, are you one of those guys that gets kind of sick to their stomach, Skyler?
I have a lot of nerves, man. Just because I put so much pressure on myself. Like, I just want to do good. And I think that plays into it. Especially when you're doing all this practice. 2 weeks of practice all comes down to 4 laps. That's if somebody isn't nervous for that, they're lying to you.
Yeah, that's pretty intense there. But yeah, we thank you for joining us, giving us a little insight. You're fast, you've got good notes, good guy to talk to and give us here an idea of what you guys are facing so far today. So thank you, Skyler, for coming in and talk to us, giving us a little bit of secrets, and we wish you luck.
Hey, thank you for having me. I appreciate it, and thank you guys for doing this. It's awesome, everybody. 41 veterans coming back, so that proves it. People I think the ones that didn't show up are maybe a little salty about not making it, which is, I understand. But it's awesome. You guys are doing something good.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, and good luck to you, Skyler.
Thanks, Ben.
Yep. And that was Skyler Brown, the Crawfordsville Puke Bandit. Really cool to get some insight out of him. It's one of those things that we've kind of got a different end. We've got other obligations, so we're not 100% sure. A lot of speculation, but some of what we were talking about and what we were thinking got confirmed there, and that's cool to have that insight and to be able to relay some of that to everybody else.
Exactly, Baden. And that's one of the great things about being able to chat with drivers such as this, is to be able to get their insights. There's different approaches to how you approach an event such as this, as well as how you attack a track such as this, in theory.
Oh yeah, and this is just like Skylar said. That's one thing that I do want to touch on. What he said about the nerves that hit you. That's one thing that really got me last year. I know I talked about it with Skylar, but it's one of those things that got me. It's when I knew this thing was cool, but last year when we had guys that had set in line, strapped to a race car, saying that this is the feeling, maybe worse. That's when I realized, this is something this is what we were looking for. This is what we wanted this to be. And you're seeing that already on opening day. We're not an hour into opening day, and you're seeing that. And that's another one of those things that just, it strikes me as so cool. And I just geek out over it because, that's one of those feelings that everybody should have. And everybody here gets to experience it. It's just so intense, and you understand how critical every corner is going to be, and everybody gets to feel that.
100%. We're approaching 50% through the opening practice for the Wicked Energy Gum Fake 500. It's Indy Racing Images opening practice, brought to you by Indy Racing Images, making your walls fast since 2014. To view Eli Keiko's collection, go to IndyRacingImages.com. It's been an interesting one so far, approaching 1 hour and 45 minutes on the clock left to go in practice. Bring in Billy Rowley, who's been in the director's seat throughout tonight's action so far, as well as been keeping an eye on the race cars. Billy, your thoughts on so far the early portions of practice and what some of the drivers have said so far?
It's pretty much how we expected. Skylar, James, Tyson, Dan, the top four were extremely quick last year. Just kind of been paying attention, watching guys come in as this run has gone on. I've noticed Justin Carey is now on track. Adam Plunkett is here. Keith Jeffrey also made his way in. Mark Broderick, Tyler Street, and a few others. So it's starting to pick back up. I think guys are getting back into that month of May feeling. Super hot today, so it's going to be interesting to, like listening to Skylar talk about his post-it notes with fuel mileage. Weather also has a very, very big factor in all this as well, because last year we saw it especially where guys were getting caught out by the weather. There was guys going out and qualifying, attempting to qualify in 115, 120 degree track temps, and it proved that the track gets extremely slow, twitchy, when it's like that. So these practice days, while they're not great for overall speed, they're good for figuring out what the car needs if it is that warm when it's your time to go qualify. So no real shocks to me up at the top of the board, but a good field of cars once again. The same usual characters as we had last year in the first running. So glad to be here late December, early January, and just kind of enjoying the show at this point. So
yes, indeed, as Billy Bowerman just flipped over top the tire barrier off the exit of turn 2 in the retaining wall. He had been talking about when drivers were discussing potential pit party. If you help me find more speed, essentially was the answer he gave. He is currently second slowest on the board, and he cartwheeled his way over top the wall. Also good to get those types of crashes out of your system, Billy, I'm guessing.
Yeah, those are... we went on board with him there for a little bit. That's those are ones that you definitely don't want to do too much of. It's
mildly inconvenient.
Mildly inconvenient, as some would say. It's been a pretty uneventful practice so far. As far as wrecks goes, Stephen Hill gets a little bit free. but it's, hearing Hank talk about it earlier, this is it's such a fun race to be a part of. I'm glad that I don't have to qualify because I would be sure to screw it up. But it's a very fun thing that I'm glad that's keeping some traction. Big thanks to Matt Henninger at Wicked Energy Gum for coming on board for the second year to be the title sponsor, and a lot of our other partners as well coming on board. So we'll have been frantically the last week or so has been kind of a struggle for me, but we're making headway through it with overlays and commercials and things like that. So the broadcasts coming up here in the next week or so, over this next week, are going to be getting better and better throughout. Just appreciate everybody for coming. It's been a pretty busy evening so far, but just massive thank you to everybody that's supported this event and becoming a part of it. Heard Chris talk about earlier, just a special event to kind of wet the whistle a little bit, especially for those of us that are the diehard Indy faithful that really enjoy Indianapolis more than really anything on the planet. So it's an enjoyable experience, and just glad to see everybody's already in the server and having a good time.
Absolutely. And the one thing to think about too is, on top of things, it's more than a 1 or 2 or multiple day event. As like the real world event, it's a multiple week event. To not only with the Crescent Donut Patriot 100, the fake 500, you also have the night before the 500, the dirt race that takes place at Kokomo the night before the fake 500. Hence the name of the race, and all these practices that opens it up to that real world feel that I've heard so many drivers recently, Billy, talk about. They love hearing that and love being a part of it because of the feeling they have when they see it and be a part of it as a spectator.
Yeah, last year I thought it was absolutely great on race day. The amount of people that were watching it and genuinely invested. As we were looking through, some of the analytics from last year's show, we were having viewers that weren't just sticking around for 3 or 4 minutes and then taking off and going and doing something else. They were invested here for a few hours, and especially over qualifying days, chat was going absolutely insane when guys were pulling their qualifying times that were locked into the show, and people that qualified earlier in the day that were sitting 12th, 13th, 14th trying to figure out, am I going to have to run tomorrow? Am I locked in? Do I need to pull my time? What do I need to do? So watching, going back and watching those races, I think is it's pretty fun to go back and look at it, especially the fake 500 last year. Such a good race. Hated that it ended under caution, but that's Indy. There's been multiple cases where that's been like that throughout the history of the real race. So it's as Tyler Grafton goes for a little bit of a spin cycle. But it's cool to see that these teams are showing up. You spoke about it earlier. A lot of teams coming into this. The Jim Beaver Esports team, they do a lot of dirt road, off-road trucks and rallycross, and with Bobby Sant, he used to run the World of Outlaw Sprint Car Tour, the USAC Sprint Car deal, and just to see that group come in and be pretty fast out of the box. Dave Bodio sitting 6th, Rafferty's in 8th, Keith Jeffrey down in 23rd right now, but he's only got a few laps onto the racetrack. So it's definitely a good atmosphere, and with the way that the teams have worked, you really almost have to work together to try to find that speed, especially in cases like this where the track's getting hot. Figure out what adjustments work, what adjustments don't. And actually, just looking at it now on timing and scoring, it looks like Kevin Click, your inaugural winner, is now logging himself into the server. Bryce Bailey is out on the racetrack as well. He made kind of a hero attempt last year to put himself into the field. So Bryce is another one of those that's extremely quick on the dirt. I know you've seen a lot of them as well, Justin. Especially now in the big block modifieds, he's starting up his real life racing career. as well. So Bryce Bailey, another pretty big name, coming into the Fake 500. So it looks like we've got 29 out of the 60 entries in for practice for the first day, which is pretty unreal, and just shows how serious a lot of these guys are taking it.
I agree with you absolutely, and that's one of the main things too when you think about it is for the eNASCAR Coco iRacing series here from drivers all the time. They put in thousands upon thousands of laps. Some of those drivers. Not sure how the lap total specifically for the dirt side can come into play. More so the events that come into play. It seems on that side, but the more laps you turn is almost the better, as long as you don't get too much fatigue building.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially here, like Skylar was saying, this is a car nobody really runs in the ovals. I think before we did this past May, there was only a couple of races around here for these. So I mean, it's a late '70s ground effects Formula One car that we've turned into kind of an Indianapolis monster, and it gives the guys a challenge that don't run. It put everybody really on a pretty even playing field, and with the way that the setups work, finding that speed is just a couple of clicks away. You can dial yourself. Last year, I remember, Kyle May was one in particular that he was sitting on bump day and, on the outside looking in, and he was very, very close and started really clicking around in the setup shop a little bit, trying to find some more speed, and actually tuned himself out more than he tuned himself in. So you really have to be mindful and keep track of what you do throughout the entire week of practice leading up to the qualifying weekend, which really is an event just as big as the race is. A lot of these guys focus on just getting into the race is the most important thing, and then going from there. And then once you get into the race, with this year, as Rafferty gets a little bit into the fence, but we've talked about weather, and weather is a big factor of it, so you have to be careful with that. But unlike last year where we did have, that fast repair, you basically had that gift in your pocket. You don't have that this year. So really, you have to be so much more patient now, which I think we're going to see a lot different of a race with guys knowing that they don't have that in their back pocket. We saw it come into play as Keiko gets hard into the fence. We saw that at the rookie orientation race. Hank Silver was being extremely aggressive and like he was saying in his interview, trying to find out where the limit of the race car is. And that's how you have to find it. So you have to use these practice sessions now to figure out where the limit is around Indianapolis, because once you get into the race, you don't have the option. That's just what you have.
Yeah, and we've seen many people use those backup upon backup cars. That parking lot has got to be full of those loaded 79s. But let's talk about the sponsorship support. You mentioned a lot of big names and a lot of big sponsors, of course, coming back and joining the efforts. And on top of that, fans also can buy in $1 per lap to essentially have a lap named after them. And many have jumped onto that, including drivers such as Matthew Henniger, who has the rights to the first lap, and Shea Powell, for example, the 21st lap.
Yeah, it's actually a really really fun piece, I think, for everybody to be able to look at. Being involved in this race doesn't necessarily mean that you have to, and we last year we had sponsorships coming on even on race day, where there's really no no amount too small or too big, to come in, but we've just, we've gotten a lot of support from everybody last year. Epperson Painting came back on board once again to be the sponsor of the night before the 500. Tomorrow's practice session, sponsored by the Brent Marks Racing Sim Team. Brent Marks, a sprint car driver that runs a lot of World of Outlaw races in real life, but he's got himself a sim team. They've gone through and done that. Kicking the Tires, the production page, they've gone through and they're sponsoring the Rookie of the Year. Fastlane Media is doing a double duty award for the highest average finisher in both the fake and the night before. So a lot of our partners came back from last year, which is a fantastic thing to see. But those dollar lap sponsors, get with myself or Zane, shoot us a message on Facebook, Twitter. If you're in the Discord, or if you're a driver yourself, just get a hold of us and we can get you exactly what you need there as far as getting lap sponsors done. But just a great way to get more people involved within the event. It's just been a lot of fun, getting all this stuff put together, and it just seems like there needs to be more hours in the day to try to get everything done. But really, can't thank Indy Racing Images enough for coming on board and doing the first race or first practice session of the year. Matt at Wicked Energy Gum last year, it was the Wicked Relief Gum. Just decided to change up some branding this year, but he's been a big supporter of this race last year, and one of his drivers took the win last year. So it's a very fun deal that anybody can get involved in. As little as we've got guys that have spent literally $1 and they're part of the Fake 500. So it's a very fun atmosphere, and we just appreciate everybody for helping out.
Do you have a favorite from those who have chosen their listing so far? I know I'm choosing to pick some favorites here, but of course, for those who have looked at the list, there are some interesting decisions for how they want the laps to be mentioned.
Yeah, there's a few that are there's definitely a few in there that I know were pretty interesting, but I don't necessarily have a favorite.
Okay.
I don't have a favorite, so to speak. At least not yet. We'll have to take a peek at it later on and see how things go. But I do, like I said, I do appreciate everybody for coming on board, and making all this possible. It's we've done our best to try to bring that Indianapolis feel to it and make it a homegrown event. So, as Mark Broderick gets some air time as well. So we'll actually go. Let's take a look at Kevin Click, your last year's winner, out on track for the first time this year in the Alkaline 88 water car. So, but yeah, it's been a it's been pretty enjoyable so far. I'm liking getting everything ramped up and ready to go. So.
Indeed. As we approach halfway, is there anything else you'd like to note that we didn't ask you about as these drivers make their way around the racetrack, Billy?
What was that? I'm sorry. I was reading a tweet.
Was it a good tweet?
It was pretty solid. It was kind of keeping up with Tulsa Shootout stuff. Which I know we had a few guys that were entered in last year that weren't able to run. That's over May we got extremely lucky with nothing going on with COVID, right? In its highlight, to where nothing was going on, so we had the spotlight, open schedule. We could do what we want. This year, we want to pick a date and a time where it's an annual event, and this was kind of what made sense. But unfortunately, around Tulsa Shootout time, so I was just kind of catching up with there. But
that actually brings up a good question, since the next driver who just jumped in for practice is TJ Majors. He is also on the racetrack running down the front stretch at 160 miles an hour. He's one of the drivers returning, and one of those a part of that real world racing community. Your thoughts on having someone like Majors back, Landon Castle, and the various other real world drivers who have taken part in this event so far in its history?
Well, and that's one of the things that I'm pretty proud of. TJ Majors ran this race last year, was in contention to win. Him and Kevin Hamlin were teammates last year. Kevin unfortunately had some other obligations. He wasn't able to run. Parker Kligerman, he really wanted to come back, but he had some obligations with NBC, so he really couldn't get his scheduling worked out. But we're we're thankful to those guys for coming and running. We're trying to grow this thing every single year. We've had some interest from Connor Daly and a few others. Just couldn't fit it into the schedules this year, but hopefully later on down the road we can get some more of those guys in, get some more of that real life flavor. But I think it's cool. We mentioned. Especially with the real name drivers like Landon Castle. I know he absolutely loved this race last year. The big thing to take from that is just we'd talked, if you guys had watched the finale for the DRT, the Dirt Racing Tour a couple weeks ago. We were talking about Tony Bachhoven that was on and he was helping us call the race. A lot of these guys, a lot of these sim racers may never get the chance to race, and have a Tony Bachhoven announce some more, be able to race with a guy like Landon Castle or TJ Majors that's worked, he's a cup champion spotter. So a lot of these guys never get the chance to do that, and this just brings a good opportunity for them to race with some of those real world guys. And as iRacing has grown more and more popular, we've seen guys, Tony Kanaan is very, very invested in iRacing now. Same with, Ron Capps and a lot of other people. So it's the more iRacing grows, the more events like these I think that we're gonna be seeing, and a lot of those bigger names will be starting to run them, which is fun for the average person that isn't going to be able to run an Indy car around the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So, and especially for a guy like Landon Castle, who may never get a shot at the real 500. So it's a fun. It's definitely fun having him here. Brings a little bit more legitimacy into the race, and just a really good time having him on.
Now, one more question. Was trying to phrase this before, but I think I'm going to rephrase it the way I want to ask this. Is there anything else you want the fans to know about the impact you hope the Fake 500 has for the future and what it can do, the Wicked Energy Gum Fake 500, in the sim landscape especially, as well as the impact it can have in the real world, to that effect of how some of these events have been throughout the year and how it could go as a result of 2020?
Well, I think I think we have to take you have to take your hat off to Zane. Zane has done, myself and Baden are involved in this race, obviously, very heavily with some planning and some scheduling and things like that. But this race to me is one of the most important on the sim, from a professional level, as well as that realism factor of getting guys back at it. When Brian Blackford, who's been sim racing, as long as a lot of these kids have been alive, for him to come and say that this kind of re-sparked his interest in racing again, at least on the sim level, it's pretty cool. I've noticed that over the last ever since May, a lot of the bigger events that we've seen have all kind of had this sort of same base to it, this same feel, with realistic weather and the way that drivers are to represent themselves and things like that. I think it's always a good change whenever you make something a little bit more serious than it probably should be. It adds a little bit of that fun flavor into it of that real atmosphere. That's one of the important things. But I think as far as the scope of iRacing goes, this whole simulation is evolving pretty rapidly. Ever since really the COVID outbreak, it's grown exponentially. A lot more broadcasts. I mean, you do a lot of broadcasting through a lot of different networks, a lot of different types of cars. It just seems like it's growing more and more rapidly throughout the scope of it, and I hope that people look at it and go, that's an event I really want to run because it's professionally ran and it's still fun at the same time. That's one of the big hopes that I have. We're not interested in, it's not a toot your own horn type of thing, but it does make you feel good when you do get messages from other people out there that are, putting on these races and telling us that, this race kind of inspired it or inspired a rule change or whatever it may be. So it's definitely, it's humbling. That's a long answer or short answer that was way too long, but it's humbling to see the amount of support that we get through the sim community. And again, a lot of that credit goes to Zane. Zane's done a heck of a job with, keeping everything organized, getting everybody on schedule, especially qualifying days coming up. That's our busiest day, especially for me here in the broadcast booth with updating graphics on the fly and getting everything, ready to go. It's a long day. I think last year, me and Baden, what did we stream? It was 10 and a half hours a day, qualifying days.
It ended up being a long.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like all that long. It's because it's such a fun day, a lot of action going on. And that's the kind of things that I think people want to see, and especially during the pandemic, I think people saw that you can have a good sim race if one's put on well. People will, there's still those people that, will never get on board with sim racing, and that's totally okay. But when you look at it for what it is, this is realistically, other than the fact that a driver theoretically can't get hurt, it's really no different. It's the same, you've got a steering wheel, 2 pedals, whatever kind of shifter you want, and you still race. Whether it's on a computer or in real life, I know for me personally, my real racing career, I wouldn't say got cut short, but definitely not as long as I'd like it to be. But iRacing really does a good job of scratching that itch of trying to give that real feel to it, and for these guys to be able to run, basically their Indianapolis 500, that I think is a pretty big deal and a pretty special deal for a lot of these guys.
And one thing I'd like to piggyback off of there, Billy, you see a lot of guys on here that have been accomplished racers that move over to iRacing because it's not feasible for them to continue to race for whatever reason it may be. You see, like a Mark Jessup. It's really cool to see Mark Jessup on here a decent amount. Last year he did the night before the 500. He took that pretty serious. He had his wife spotting for him in that, didn't he?
Yeah. She.
Another.
Yeah, and that's some of these guys that necessarily didn't want their careers to end. I know Mark is one of them. Mark. Me and Mark have had very many candid conversations. We go way back to the micro sprint days, and I've worked on his sprint cars before and things like that. Mark's a racer, and when he couldn't race anymore, it hurt him for a few years. And being able to get onto iRacing and still kind of get that competitive juice flowing as far as a sprint car driver goes, that's just a
healthier outlet.
Much healthier. Much healthier. And, and then we go back to guys too, like Ronnie Werdeman, for instance, that he never sat foot in a Silver Crown car, and he went and set 7th or 8th quick time at Eldora at the 4 Crown, and said very openly and honestly over the radio right after he got done qualifying, I told him, hell of a lap, bud, and he said, couldn't have done it without iRacing. It's kept me sharp. I haven't been in a car in X amount of years. So iRacing is a very good tool to keep yourself sharp. Is it all the same? No, not necessarily. And a lot of real world drivers struggle with, the feel of the car. But as far as, you're knocking the rust off, I think it's a hell of a tool to keep guys somewhat fresh.
You had last year, lest we not forget, we had entered in the Fake 500 the 1994 USAC National Sprint Car Tour Rookie of the Year.
Correct.
Robert Smith. That was so cool.
Yeah,
that was, and he ran the night before, and he ended up running the. No, he did. He did end up in the show. Correct.
I think I don't remember if he ended up in the show. I know he ran the Patriot, I believe. but it's just
He did end up in the show. He did end
he
up
did
in
end
the
up
show.
okay.
Which was so cool. A guy like that, it's not feasible for him or Martin Jessup to go racing anymore, but they can still go do something really cool. And the 1994 USAC Rookie of the Year wanted to run our race, and he was pretty pumped about it. That was one of my favorite parts, truthfully, because, that's pretty special. That's a guy that's done something really, really cool in a race car.
Well, and I think that's, something that just a lot of people don't really look at sim racing for that purpose. They look at it as, cartoon racing, and that's all it is. But it for a lot of people, it's a lot more than that. It's a way to either stay sharp or kind of continue on after their career is over. We're looking at Justin Carey right now. He's one that I would be hard pressed to find a man that loves Indianapolis Motor Speedway as much as Justin Carey does. He's actually a spotter for the IndyCar series. He's spotted multiple Indianapolis 500s. He's a friend of mine that actually gave me some pointers when I spotted at the Speedway once or twice, and it's. Again, it goes back to a lot of these guys are never going to get the chance to be able to call themselves an Indianapolis 500 winner, but if you can do it virtually, that's pretty cool. And I think a lot of people see it that way. The money for this deal isn't high, and that's by design. There's a lot of races that are big paying money to win or run up front, but not much in the back. And we take pride in the fact that if you make the race, you're walking out with a decent chunk of money. So it's important. It's not all about the money, but last year, the feedback was just absolutely great. Made a few tweaks for this year, and just can't wait till race day.
I can't wait till race day at this point as well. It's going to be interesting how things play out, and it's been great talking with you, Billy. Thank you very much for all the work you do, and we've had a stellar amount of intrigue throughout this entire session. One thing to note, though, in the past couple minutes, TJ Majors has bumped his way to third. That was on his 12th practice lap with a 47.034. That gets him inside the top 3 in practice after struggling early on. That could be the help of draft, but that's the fastest time in the past hour, Baden, because the track temp is at its hottest it's been, 124 degrees. He was able to find some speed and then some on a hot track. What does that mean for you if you were on a cold track then? You'd have to think.
I think that shows that he's got a lot of stability, and that is huge here. To have that stability no matter what. And even, truthfully, even if that was a toe speed, with the track temp raising as much as it has, it's made a massive swing. Ambience went up, I believe, just a degree. The ambient is crucial as well, but that track temp going up like that's big. And even if it was a toe lap, that shows that he's got some serious stability built in the car for traffic, and that is huge on its own. We talk about qualifying all day, but to have that stability and that speed is a really important component to what you're doing here. With that lap, we might be able to go back here in a little bit and see if that was a toe lap or not. But either way, to find that speed here, that's pretty big flex. Toe or not, that's a big flex. And if that was a no toe speed, TJ Majors is going to be really, really fast.
Yes, indeed. Right now, here's a rundown with about an hour and 15 minutes to go, I should rather say, on the board. A 47.001, still the quickest time from Skylar Brown for the early parts of the session. That was a 191.485 in the mile per hour. Then a 191.3 was set by James Tiernan. TJ Majors minutes ago set a 47.034. That's a 191.350 in terms of minutes, or mile per hour rather. Then it's a 190.9, the first in that bracket from Tyson Landis. Then Daniel Zegers with a 190.932. So the lap times are there. It's going to be interesting how the weather changes throughout the entire week, though, because again, this is based on real world historical archive weather from a past Indy 500.
Yeah, and that was something that we looked at too, of trying to keep that realism factor into it. So what we basically did was went back, found some historical data, and nobody knows what year it's from except for a couple of us. So it's still May, and we're not sure what year it is. So that's been an important factor. You know, last year some guys were caught out by the weather, which in some fast cars. We talked about Aaron Ralphs earlier, that he was one of those that got caught out by weather, but that's Indianapolis. That's just how it works.
And we've seen it at Anderson. We've been around the Little 5 enough. We're familiar with that playing a role even there. So that doesn't surprise us, but there's a lot of guys on here that have never been forced to take the weather so into account. It's something that we're familiar with being around the Little 500, but these guys, it's a new deal.
Yes, indeed. Standing by, Billy Rowley's with Keith Jeffrey with the organizations that has one of its bigger contingencies in this year's event, Jim Beaver Esports. Billy?
Keith, welcome to the virtual month of May at the Fake 500. How are you doing, sir?
Doing really good. Thanks for having me in, guys. How you doing?
Well, we're coming up on the magical happy hour at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, so everything is great with me. But taking a look at the timing sheets right now, your teammates sitting in the top 10. You're just a little bit on the outside looking in. What's the feeling so far?
I'm struggling with the track temp a little bit right now, if we're being honest. I've tested a little bit. It's been a little cooler, so I'm just trying to get a handle on that, trying to make single car runs. So I'm not too worried about the times on the board right now. I've seen a lot of drafting, so I'm just going to focus on making my car feel good and what's fast, and see where we're at this weekend. But yeah, I think I'm just fighting the track right now and trying to get a good handle on it to make it good for Saturday and Sunday. Hopefully just Saturday, actually, right?
Yeah, hopefully if things go as planned, just Saturday, and then can sit and have a beverage or two on Sunday and just watch. But you guys with Jim Beaver Esports organization brought in quite a few drivers this year. Good looking cars, so big thank you to that. You guys all had a really good showing at the rookie orientation race last Wednesday. Have you guys really ran these cars a lot, whether on road courses or anything like that earlier?
To be honest with you, I'm a asphalt short track guy. I've been tackling the super late model lately, trying to learn that thing and get up to speed. I mean, obviously there's a crazy amount of talent in that division on iRacing. So this is my first time I've ever really touched this car, to be honest. I don't think I've raced it, practiced it, anything. I saw this event, wanted to be part of it. It's a cool deal. So I've been learning. It's been a nice little break from the other stuff, just trying to figure out how to make it go fast. So first time, I think, for all of us.
Yeah, and you can tell it's paying off. Dave Bodio in 7th and Bobby Rafferty in 9th. They were in fairly early into the session when it was still a little bit cooler. So the lap times are inducive of that. But it's what was the big reason that you guys really wanted to get into the Fake 500 this year? Did you guys pay attention to it or watch it last year to kind of see how things went and gone from there, or was it just kind of an on a whim thing?
Yeah, personally, I just like supporting the big events that I find that look like, something unique and special and that are ran the right way, and I definitely think you guys are doing that, so kudos to you. And then it's always good to get the Fistful of Bourbon, name out there when you get a good audience. They've been a great sponsor for us over the last 4 or 5 months since we brought them in. So like I said, mainly for me personally, just like to support guys that are putting together cool stuff like this, and just like it's always good to get the sponsor out there, right? And try and put on a good show for them.
Well, and I know there's one thing that me and Baden support. It is bourbon. So we're
Correct.
definitely glad that Fistful of Bourbon came on board with you guys, and it's cool to see real life, some real companies. I have people that ask me all the time with our sprint car team if the people that are on the side of these cars is real sponsors, and the answer is yes. There's some sponsorship agreements that go around, and running these bigger events helps get the name out. Especially, I know before this race I'd never heard of that, and brings a little bit of awareness. So big thanks to them for coming on board with you guys.
Yeah, definitely. If you or anybody listening, definitely go try Fistful Bourbon. It's very tasty. But yeah, I agree. It's a pretty cool deal to be able to tell people that you're bringing the real world into this virtual hobby that we have. So pretty special. Definitely got a good thing going here with Jim Beaver Esports and all the guys. Just I don't know, man. Like I said, I'm a little down on the board right now, but I'm feeling good. I'm having fun, and might need to unwind with a glass of Fistful tonight. But we'll get to that point.
Sponsor plugs are on point, man. But we'll let you get back to some practice, and I must say, easily top 5 driver bio picture that I've seen so far. So big fan of that. Big
Absolutely.
fan of that. We'll let you get out of here, and thanks for joining us, Keith.
All right, thanks, guys.
And that was Keith Jeffrey from Jim Beaver Esports joining us here in the broadcast booth. And Baden, I know some of the drivers you're looking towards and I've known from your experiences are definitely also going to be people that you're keeping an eye on for the next little while or so to see how they improve.
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, I'm watching Kyle May. We'll get him here in a minute and talk to him. Actually, a cool note on him. He works on vintage cars. That's his day job. I think me and Billy are both bitter about that every time we get a Snapchat from him. But it's a cool job. But he works on vintage race cars all day, every day. So this is one of those things. It's just neat. We'll talk to him a little bit about that when he gets in here. Actually, there he is right there. Hey, Kyle May, it's Baden Stewart up in the booth. Do you got a copy?
Kyle May, I believe, is actually pulling off to the racetrack to join us here right now. He is 20th on, or rather, has a 47.459 in the number 39 car. Kyle May, do you now have a copy with Baden?
Kyle's good at vintage cars, not so much at Discord.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Apologies for jumping in while you're on the racetrack, but Baden, I believe, is looking forward to really talk to you.
Yeah.
What's going on, boys?
I want to talk to Kyle. Kyle, how you feeling?
Not good.
Oh,
it's not good.
That's not a good mindset. You're supposed to say that you're sandbagging.
Yeah, I'm sandbagging. That's
right.
what it is.
Kyle
There you go.
Kyle is one of the guys that works in a dirt sprint car. What have I always told you? It's never your fault. It's always somebody else.
Always somebody else or the car or your fault when you're working on my car.
That's right. See, you're
not my fault.
Yeah, there you go. See, that is the racer mentality, and that's what we're looking for.
I did my job. I was in the thing driving it, but somebody messed up with the setup. That's not on.
See, this is an interesting dynamic because from everything I've ever seen, a guy with a wrench has never been wrong. So, we'll see how that.
The issue is everybody thinks they're right.
Yeah, nobody's ever wrong.
No, of course not.
But no, pretty sharp paint scheme you got there. I know you were pretty pumped up about getting that rolling. That's Rotham's paint scheme. I'm digging it. That's looking sharp on that thing.
Yeah, I'm liking it so far. We had the Skull Bandit theme on last year, and that was a fun one, and we wanted to kind of do something similar.
You and Mark Broderick were twinning last year with the Skull Bandits. Kyle, we were talking about this right before you jumped in. We're talking all about Kyle May. Well, Kyle May evidently, he texted me earlier, Billy. He pulled into the pits in part just to text me to say that you need to stop going to him when he's crashing. He was really upset about that.
Well, and that's we've talked about this in the dirt races before that there is definitely an announcer's curse in some cases, and it seems like Kyle's got it.
We were doing that last year too.
Is it just track temp right now that's really just kind of throwing you off? The track temp right now is just, it's climbing 123 right now, so it's a lot hotter than it has been most of the days last year. Just vastly different with the car.
Yeah, I'm fighting the car a little bit right now. She's a little loose. But really right now I'm just trying to get laps in. I haven't driven this car or this track since the inaugural event. So I'm really just kind of knocking the rust off right now. I went out with my qualifying set from last year and just to kind of get a few laps in and see where I was sitting. And not terrible. I think I'm sitting in 21st right now, I believe. Which isn't too bad, I feel like. Now I'm just out with the race setup, just turning laps, getting my line down, getting smooth in the car again, just kind of refreshing myself from last time. This car at this track, you have to be so smooth and just hit your marks every lap, and you really can't mess up. Especially, obviously, in qualifying, you have to run. Your lap has to be perfect every corner. Talking in race cars is hard. Wow. But yeah, just trying to get back in the swing of things. I have completely forgotten everything that I learned about setup on this car and what to do, so I'm going to have to dive back into that and try and not look like an idiot.
So I will say, Kyle, if there's one person here who should have the ultimate notebook, it should be you. You work with guys that worked on Indy cars at Indianapolis in this time period. You live right next door to the Speedway. You work on vintage cars every day. You've got to have an upper hand here.
Well, one would think, but by the time I get home, I'm tired of working on race cars, man.
You live right next door to the Speedway.
I know. This is nothing new.
It should be able to talk to you, tell you what to do with the thing.
Well, I was hoping moving to Speedway might give me a little bit of an upper hand behind the wheel, but since I've moved here, my record is not good.
Well, I mean, I think it's time to change that.
Well, my lease is up in March, so.
Well, you're gonna have to make do with it now, then.
I don't think I'm able to get a new place before this race kicks off.
Uh-oh. So here is the question. We were talking about it earlier. Is it kind of cool for you to spend all day working on vintage race cars and then come home and run a vintage F1 car in Indianapolis? Is there something kind of cool about that? Because there's got to be.
Yeah, it's. I'm very lucky.
Yeah, we see the Snapchats from your job.
Yeah, I love to torture you with those. I know just how much that breaks your heart. You can't be there, but I got that VR headset a couple weeks ago, and I was in this car playing around at Long Beach, and just kind of you can look around and kind of see the front uprights and what's going on the front end a little bit, and just looking around and seeing things that I recognize, or trying to see, how do they do that, or what's how's this set up on this car, and comparing that to some of the stuff we've got at work is kind of cool, and just the realism. You look at this stuff, and that's the way it is. That's how these old cars are. It's spot on, and it's cool to be able to see how good of a job the game did, really, with recreating these cool cars. Which, I mean, obviously it's all scanned and everything, but they did a killer job.
So here's, I guess, another question with your VR. Being the world's tallest sprint car driver, do you have your VR set to where your head is above the roll bar as it would be in real life?
Well, without the VR, I do. And with the VR, I'm a little bit down in the car more.
Aerodynamics, that's important.
Makes me feel like an actual race car driver.
Feel like
somebody that actually
5'10".
Yeah. Sometimes I wonder what would it be like to be, the size of a race car driver in a race car instead of the size of a college basketball player in a race car. And I imagine a world with less Crisco, one less shoehorn, a lot less bruises, and you can have a shot at a racing career, jumping from car to car, getting car owners and making deals, and not being stuck to one car because you had to have it custom made.
I will say, I have sat in your sprint car a few times. Boy, is it comfy. It's literally like sitting in a lazy boy. Just, it's impressive.
All the legroom.
It's impressive, but
You could probably prop your feet up on the steering box in that thing.
I think I did actually at one point.
Long sprint cars are the best.
Yeah.
They're so nice.
Yeah.
Agreed.
It's so good. I had something else I was going to ask Kyle May, but I done forgot. You can tell we're trudging through. We're in happy hour. We're forgetting things. We've been here for 2 hours.
Oh no, it's already starting.
Happy hour is upon us. Sounds.
Oh, Kyle, I was going to tell you.
Yeah.
I remembered. I was going to tell you. You can't get yourself down about being a tall race car driver because the gurney bubble does exist.
Well, I know somebody's going to be needing to buy a gurney bubble before too long.
Is it me?
It's you.
It's me for Kyle May. I got to buy a Kyle May a gurney bubble. The gurney bubble exists for a reason, so you can hop in anything your heart desires. It's just a little bit harder to make a gurney bubble out of carbon fiber than it is fiberglass.
Yep. I try to make it work to my advantage, though. Plus, the ladies like tall guys, and I'm a race car driver. So, like,
this is true.
It's a winning combination.
Well, before it gets too deep in
Well,
here, we'll let you.
It's a winning combination, but not quite on the track because we don't do a whole lot of winning.
Hey, you know what?
But hey, we came close last year in the Patriot 100.
You did have a very good race in the Patriot 100. Last year, we were talking so far this year about weather and everything else. Weather is such an important factor in this. I think you were one of the guys that had the speed to make the race last year, but the weather kind of kept you out. But that's Indy. That's a lot of people don't like it, but that's Indy. That's just how it works. And hopefully your draw is a little bit better. We'll be doing that, I believe, later on tonight after practice is over. So.
Oh boy!
That way we'll know who's going to be qualifying where. It might be either today or tomorrow. Don't quote me on that. But we'll let you get out of here so you can get back to practicing and have a good rest of the week, buddy.
All right. Thanks for putting this on, guys. This is a cool deal. Hopefully, I'll get to talk to you guys a little bit more throughout the week, and hopefully, everybody watching will see me crashing less.
That is Kyle May, ladies and gentlemen. He's actually, after Dale Blaney retired, Kyle May probably is the tallest sprint car driver right now.
I think he is. He was actually one of my favorite stories of the Fake Five last year because if you remember, on bump day, he had made, I believe, 2 attempts, and he just said, "You know what? Nah, I think I'm done." And he had the car in the trailer, and he was on the way to the bar, and he went, "You know what? I got one more run. I might as well use it." And then came back and managed to make the Patriot 100. Just kind of hit or miss. Wasn't sure if he was going to take that run. He went ahead and did it. It worked out for him all right. That was just one of the entertaining things. Because I think both me and Billy were telling him, "Dude, you got another run. Just take it. You might as well. It's not going to hurt anything. Just do it." He said, "All right, whatever, guys." And, paid off for him. So hopefully Kyle May finds a little more speed here. Always fun to talk to.
Yeah, and while we were talking, and I'll let Justin take over, but we've got ourselves a new quick time.
Yes, indeed. As the interviews were going on, James Tiernan moved to the top of the board, one of the elbows up sim sport machines. And he's right now standing by and in the midst of some battles. James, do you have a copy?
Yes, sir. I do have a copy. Let me pull off here so I can concentrate on this. I'm sure Dan will understand. Kind of working on him. He's kind of working on driving his partners and kind of working on a race set at the moment.
How is that going so far for your race car, especially since, well, you're at the top of the board by almost 0.2 of a second at some of the hottest track temperatures of the entire night?
I think that result kind of speaks for itself a bit. The fact that this is a race setup that's working that well, and that's the reason too I got it, was I got lucky with the draft. But the car's feeling really good. You saw early on I had some issues in turn 1. I think that's been about the story for everyone today, is exit at turn 1, everyone's getting some snap oversteer, and I've been able to kind of work that out. Me and Dan are just running fuel stints at this point, and we're running good. Well, we can kind of make passes when we need to. The track temp's definitely a ton higher than it was last year, but I think as far as setup goes, I've kind of done some practice before this event. and we've really kind of got this thing dialed in at this point. So I'm feeling really good for our prospects in the race, especially if it's this temperature for the actual day of the Fake 500.
Well, here's the thing when it comes to that. Weather kind of doesn't stay exactly the same every single day of the entire month, you know? So it can change. So there's that. How do you plan to try to adapt to that change as a real-world team would have to?
Yeah, that's a good question. Really, it's just a matter of kind of playing it by ear. So as these track temps cool, you can get away with a lot more as far as the setup goes. Like I'll be 2 or 3 miles an hour quicker down the front stretch just because I'll have less aero in it. I'll do a couple other, trade secrets to kind of make sure I get down the front stretch quicker. But right now, more important than anything is just getting through the corners. So, making sure that you're not either A, understeering, or B, kind of losing it like you're seeing a lot of people do. So we have a lot of really good data from last year as far as my setups go because it was a lot cooler. So we can kind of find an in-between if track temps are kind of in between that, or they're more towards last year, or if they're hot right now, I feel like we're going to be hard to beat. But it's only the first practice. You never know what other people come with. People could see my time really work their tail off and come up with something better. You never really know. So we're at a good point where we're at right now. We're super happy with it. Yeah, don't have any complaints, but we're still working to get this thing faster, and we're working to get some of our teammates a little more experience because some of our teammates didn't make it last year, and this year we just have the better setups, and getting them to kind of adapt to my driving style with those setups is also kind of a challenge we're kind of going through at the moment.
Was going to say, how do you try and teach that necessarily? Because, of course, every driver is different, and while the adaptability is important, not everyone can immediately copy the exact line for line.
Yeah, and the main thing is just me kind of looking at what they're doing in the car and kind of giving them little pointers. My line has been so far pretty much to enter a little bit wide and then cut down a little more towards exit, and that makes it so I get less of that snap oversteer that we're seeing in one. And just kind of relaying that information, telling them what to do with anti-roll bars. That's a huge part of what's going on right now, is just staying on top of that. There's no static anti-roll bar you're going to sit with on the track. As the fuel load changes, as the track temperature increases or decreases, you're going to want to increase or decrease both your front and rear bars to kind of stay on top of it. So you're not just putting out a setup there and staying with it the entire time. You're continually changing it, and that's something that just takes trial and error with the drivers.
How is it trying to find the balance as well between being in real life a pilot to racing in the pros on iRacing to going back and forth? How do you find that balance?
Well, the whole pilot thing, that balance has been easy because the market just kind of went not so well thanks to COVID. So still looking for a job in that department. But as far as going back to asphalt and everything, it's not too bad. I'm not currently a pro, which also helps. So a lot of my other teammates are practicing for the World of Outlaws. I don't have that stress anymore, and I can focus a little more on things like this, like the more fun events.
I was going to say, you have run pro this year, though, since there is a 2021 season now for the iRacing World of Outlaws non-synergetic sprint cars, and have also raced in things such as the Champions League. But I believe my fellow broadcasters in the booth, Billy Rowley and Braden Stewart, have a lot of stories you can tell when it comes to someone like yourself. They spoke the world of you earlier on.
That's fantastic to hear.
He's lying. No, we didn't.
Yeah.
I may have, but
Zane Scott did.
I just want to say I will not clear his black flags if requested.
So that was funny. Last year, someone kind of let me go before the start of the green flag. He lifted and didn't go and told me to basically go around him, and then I got a black flag and I didn't get cleared. But that wasn't the big issue. That was someone trying to stick it wide and not landing it. But it was a fun race last year. A little more cautions I'd like to see, and I tried to pull off the Sullivan thing where it was a spin and win. Like I said, I still didn't have the car dialed in last year. I kind of took off, had a decent lead in the first stint, but then at the very end of it, I spun, brought up a caution, and then I went into the pits and had to work my way up from there. So I think this year my focus is less so on qualifying and more so finding something good for the race, because I think I already got something good for qualifying. We'll see. You never know. But I'm pretty confident I'll make the show, and I'm also pretty confident I'll race well once I get there.
Absolutely. Anything else you'd like to add that you like the fans to know about you and your team's efforts?
Really, I'd just say Elbows Up is kind of a fantastic organization to be with, where we do different things. A lot of teams just kind of stay in the same, either dirt oval or just pavement, and then our team does a lot of both. So really happy to be part of this organization. I'd like to thank all my sponsors, and I'm sure Billy and the rest have shown off our sponsors so far, so I won't go into all of them, but this is a lot of fun. I'm glad to have this event back.
Thank you very much for your time, James.
All right, appreciate it. You guys have a good day.
You too. That's James Chernin, rather. Once again, he's at the top of your board here in practice, and to start things off for the week. And very interesting character, I will say that, Baden, rather.
Yeah, we all call him Jimbo, because that's just fitting. It's just a fitting nickname. But no, James is really good. I think you see with the Fake 5, he showed it last year. He has really good racecraft, and that's one of those things that you can see shine through on iRacing that's really, really cool when you can pick up that somebody does have really good racecraft, and he shows that in this. He's smart, knows where to put the car, and he's good at pacing himself. So it's one of those things that I think a lot of us, we've been around racing enough that we can see it and we can appreciate it, and that's one of those things that I do really, really like about him. That's just one of those things that I have a lot of respect when I see it, but we're not going to tell him that. We're not going to let him know that we said that.
He can listen back and hear that.
All right, we're gonna have to cut that part out.
We'll have to edit some stuff out.
We're not live, are we?
No.
Yes, we are. Yes.
Yeah, that's not good.
No, you've had the with your experience commentating for the World of Outlaw Pro Series, you've gotten to see James, James race, and honestly, when from the Homer standpoint, at least at this point, James just laid the whooping to me in a non-wing car a couple years ago, and but he really wanted to learn wing stuff, so I helped him on the wing stuff. He helped me on the non-wing stuff some, and there's a YouTube video out there of me completely trolling him because I beat him he was a USAC pro and ran podium there a couple times, and I beat him heads up in a DOB race once, and I made sure to make a clickbaity YouTube video about it. But James is one of those guys. He's super fast, but he's also become a good friend, which is one of the cool things about sim racing in general. Is you get to meet so many different people from all around the country that you can race with and have a good time with. And we've met before a few times. We've gone to midget races, and heck, he's helped me actually push Kyle May's midget up to the line at DeCoin before. So James is a heck of a dude, heck of a driver, and he's one of those that would love to see him in a real car someday to see what he's capable of doing. I think there's a lot of people like that. A lot of people like that out there, within the iRacing world. And it looks like actually Hi-Ho Silver and Chase Rowdman, your cohort in crime for the Pro Series. Looks like they're getting ready to roll out for some practice.
Was about to mention Chase Rodman joined in a few moments ago and also flipped a few moments ago in the 48.7s at the moment, trying to get used to this racetrack. And that's one of the great things, too, is even the announcers can get in some of the racing with some of the rise of the various different series. And I'm curious how Chase does in this type of race, because haven't really ever seen him drive. He's been an active member on the servers for years, but I've never actually seen him race in an actual race.
Yeah, when in the board of directors group chat, we were just talking about new entries and things like that, and Zane said, "You're not going to believe who entered." I said, "Who?" He said, "Chase Rodman." I'm like, "Huh, really?" I also, just like you, I've never seen him race. I've heard him announce, multiple world championship races and, be a part of different broadcasting crews. You see him on Dirt Vision now, but I don't think I've ever seen him race before. So it's going to be cool to see how he does. I know, he won the rookie orientation race, which locked himself into the qualifying field, at least for the Fake 500, which is I think we expected it. It was just kind of a there's a lot of unknowns there, and I think a lot of people are kind of looking at him as maybe he's got the speed and can get this thing tuned up and put himself into the field pretty solid.
Yeah, I am so very intrigued about all of this. Keep in mind, again, Chase Rodman, announcer with the World of Outlaws, works in the pit for that side of things. Also announced for Fast 4 Media, USAC, midgets, as well on flow racing, and now he is flying through the air. So someone that does a ton of work, especially this year, is where it really came up. And one of the big things that he's told me is if it wasn't for iRacing this year, he wouldn't have gone into the level he is with the World of Outlaws side.
Well, and I think that's, me and you have had multiple, many conversations. I wanted to get you on here last year as an announcer, because I feel like announcers in general, I am an awful one. I am atrocious. I am well aware of that. Me and Baden are kind of funny sometimes, and that's about it. But
that's what we got going for us.
I mean, that's about it. But announcers in general, I think, is one of those art forms that I really hope in racing is not lost. Me and you've had conversations. I think you're one of the best that really, truthfully, I want to hear you at, a USAC sprint car race or a World of Outlaw show. Or I'll be honest with you, if you said that you were announcing a Mazda MX-5 race at Putnam Park in Indiana, I'd probably go and listen to it. And I think that announcing in general is one of those things that a lot of people, take for granted with Johnny Gibson and Tony Bachhoven and, all these legendary guys, Pat Sullivan and at Bloomington with the Silver Crown Series, and it's a start for him.
It took years on the announcing side of things to craft everything. It takes years of experience. Like, it took at least 3 years or 2 years of volunteering at least for basketball games to be able to get an opportunity for fill-in work there, which led to the opportunities. And eventually on iRacing, of course, my thought was at the time, I didn't have a car at the time, and the nearest racetrack from where I'm at, Windsor, Ontario, Canada, is 3 hours away. For the pavement side, the nearest dirt track is was called at the time South Buxton.
Oh, the Devil's D.
That's actually been rebuilt, since there was a fire this year.
Oh, really?
Or the past year. They've rebuilt it into a different type of layout. But to get back to that point, one of the first places I went at the time was GSRC, and the opportunities that have built up are big since then, because here's the thing people forget on that. On top of being a racer, on the announcing side, it opens you up to different markets and opportunities and different viewerships from different areas. You never know who's listening.
Oh, absolutely. And especially, looking at it, you can realistically, and I know your schedule is packed. Your schedule is absolutely jam-packed full. And you get to announce races of different disciplines all throughout the week. And where a lot of these guys, that do this professionally, at a real racetrack once a week, you're able to hone your craft all through the week. And obviously it's different doing it live compared to doing it over a simulator. But keeping yourself sharp and keeping yourself in that same mindset, it's no different than driving a race car. Yeah. It's all the same repetition, and the more you do it, the better you get. And I'm really thankful that you're on board with us for this upcoming Fake 500. It's going to be a pretty cool race. I'm looking forward to to race day, hearing you make the call to run to the green.
Yeah, It's going to be exciting to see, and I think it's why we're up to now 39 drivers making repetitions around the racetrack. Jeffrey Zarfos and Michael Sheridan are the next drivers looking to hit the track. 37 have put in time, separated by about more than 2 seconds. Majority of the field to the top 30 covered by 1 second. That's tight. That's very tight for any sort of field, guys.
Yeah, that's, we see that on the sprint car side of things, a lot of guys that are extremely, extremely close. With this car, we were trying to figure out what we were going to expect. Were we going to see a pack? Were we going to see, a couple car breakaway? It's been, these cars race just so extremely well, and they're so close on time, where it just comes down to being smooth, patient, and everything, and it's to see these guys' first practice session this close, this tight. I'm intrigued. I mean, realistically, the top 15 all under a blanket right now. So it's again, we're gonna see a heck of a pole day and a heck of a bump day. I have a feeling.
Oh. And if you go to Tyler Street, the Soda King special car has found a way to make a special appearance on camera. He has found a way to become stuck in the fence in the number 4 car. Again, we talked about this, getting stuff out of your system, and this is one of those things after a significant incident. Keep in mind that those significant incidents can happen during race day. Of warning, it's important to know your limitations on how hard you can squeeze, or if you squeeze too hard, what to do in case things go wrong.
Yeah, that's a that's one of those where you
Dickie Gaines at Bloomington.
Yeah, that's yeah, wow. That's one of those in iRacing where, if you guys haven't really ran iRacing very much, there's this point in the program where you just kind of you figure that guy's not going to be there anymore, and that guy still obviously was. So it's that makes it definitely interesting. But we're actually right now, a guy I want to talk about here a little bit. Really, honestly, is just never mind, goes for a spin cycle. But we'll still talk about him anyway. Juan Pablo Ruiz. We have some international flavor with this. We've got a couple of Canadians sprinkled throughout the field, I believe. We've got Jari Brupacher from Switzerland. And then we've also got Juan Pablo Ruiz from Chile. So we've got some international flavor. They're coming on strong.
Yeah, and that's the great point of iRacing, is it adds the ability for drivers across the world, not just the US or Canada, to connect with one another. And what are your thoughts on him as a driver, since he's been so far pretty consistent on the board, 29th so far, and has been trying to put in some consistent laps to get used to the track?
During the rookie orientation race, he was extremely quick. He was very aggressive. He was putting, but a lot of guys were. I think, the way that the rookie orientation race worked, we'll have a video coming out for that within the next couple of days. So that way you guys can actually see it. We ran a 40-lap race at Michigan, because Ontario unfortunately doesn't exist on iRacing, so we had to go there. But he showed a ton of speed and a lot of car control too, where he was making passes around the outside of people that were normally reserved for last-ditch efforts. He was doing it fairly early. So it's going to be is Rauteman. Hopefully he was wearing a Hans device. It's going to be interesting to see how some of these new guys shake into the fake 500 role of. Last year, we saw some guys during the race overly aggressive, take themselves out early. We saw some guys, Jeffrey Stewart's not in the field this year. We hope to get him into the booth. He had some work obligations and couldn't run this year. But Jeffrey ran 5th in the race last year, and his whole mindset was, I can't win the race or can't run top 10 if I'm crashed out lap 15. And so there's two different mentalities, the guys that are wanting to go, and the guys that are wanting to kind of do a little bit of sitting and waiting. So it's going to be interesting to see how some of these rookies, look at this field and where they're going to start. deciding how they're going to start racing each other. So I'm assuming next year or next week in practice, we're going to be seeing a lot more pit parties, so to speak, which I have a feeling we'll probably see a couple today. Some big pack runs. So it'll be interesting to see how these guys race.
Yeah, there have actually been some good three-wide battles throughout this practice. We've been seeing some good drafting snakes as well. One of the interesting things I want to mention, though, on top of things is with the Lotus 79, and want to go debating for this, is it's so easy to damage the front wing on these cars. If you, especially in the road courses, they're known for if you don't get damage, you're lucky. You tap the curbing, it likely can give you damage, and that could cost you speed, and several drivers like Billy Bowerman and several others have experienced that. Your thoughts on that and how to avoid that for the race, especially since many of these drivers are trying every single little bit of limits they can throughout the corners.
We found that last year. I can't remember who it was, but somebody rolling out in their third and final attempt when they were coming off a pit lane, they hit a road cone. They hit one of the road cones down on the bottom of the racetrack, and it knocked the front wing basically off the car. It damaged it, and it killed their speed. With these, we see some guys last year that were trying to side draft people, from the NASCAR world, which this is a ground effects car. It doesn't work. It doesn't, give each other that room. As we're watching James Tiernan and TJ Majors right now racing each other close, but yet, as I say that, and then they make contact, but keeping yourself and figuring out your limits off of each other for the race is also a very important piece to the puzzle too, of keeping yourself aggressively passive, if that can be. That's probably the best way to describe how you have to run this race, is passively aggressive. You have to take those risks when you need to, but at the same time, you don't want to put yourself out. So, like you've said, we've seen some three-wide stuff throughout practice earlier today. During the race, I fully expect to see it again. So it's just going to be it's going to be interesting to see who wants to play it safe and who's really, really going to be going for it early.
And it all boils down to running it like a long-distance race. There's a certain way you have to run a long-distance race, and you have to do it here. And the big piece of the puzzle there is taking care of your equipment, and you have no other option. When it's all said and done, that's how it's the most important thing. And that's one of the pieces of the puzzle. You have to know, the nose on the thing is finicky. You have to know that. You have to have that note. And you have no other option than to remember it. Early on in the race, you might catch an unlucky break, get a cone, something. And if it's early enough, you can repair that throughout the course of the race. You have that ability. You have that time under a yellow. You can do that. But if you're within the last 50 laps, you've got to hold on at that point. You've got to hope for something to play into your hand. But it is Indianapolis, and that can always happen. That's part of it. But the biggest thing is taking care of your equipment, and that's just another piece of the puzzle that these guys have to remember.
Approaching 30 minutes to go on the board for Indy Racing Images opening practice for the second annual Wicked Energy Come Fake 500. Quickly run through your top 10. It's James Tiernan on top of the board, running 46.836 on the stopwatch. Skylar Brown's in second with a 47 flat. TJ Majors, Tyson Landis, Daniel Zagers rounding out your top 5. Chris Peterson's in 6th. Dave Bodio from Jim Beaver Esports in 7th, one of the rookies. Hank Silver, another rookie, is in 8th. Mike Rasmus from Nexus Esports and one of the Lionheart Racing Series competitors is in 9th on the board with a 47.176. Bobby Rafferty rounding out the top 10 at the moment. 39 cars have hit the racetrack. Separation now for a majority of the drivers, still 2 seconds. Of note, some of the drivers on track: Tiernan, Brown, Zagers, along with Rasmus, Aaron Roofs, Tower Grafton, Chris Springer, Clint Stone, Dennis Gainey, Dallas Breeze, along with Tower Street, Ruiz, Keith Jeffrey, Chase Rodman, Woodward, Zarfos, and Nichols. All are on the racetrack, turning laps for these final 30 minutes. And this is again capped off at the temperatures to 124 degrees Fahrenheit up on the board. Wind has also slowed down a little bit here and there from 4 to 5 miles an hour after starting around 5 to 6 when we began today's action. And so a lot going on across the racetrack for these competitors here at Indianapolis.
Yeah, and I think it's been a pretty interesting day. I think, we've seen some guys not turn a ton of laps, come in and get themselves, get themselves a little acclimated, get themselves comfy, and like Kyle said, put your race setup on it and kind of let it go, see where the chips fall, and know what you need to do the rest of the week. And again, the weather. Last year we saw some quicker speeds because we saw cooler temperatures, but we may not see that this year. It just all really depends on what this weather decides to do. Weather, rain as well. That's another factor that we really haven't talked about is, the rubber content built up within the racetrack. It's this track is going to rubber in each day that there's no rain, and it makes a big difference as far as how your car handles, how it's set up, and going from there. It looks like Rowdeman was upside down there again. He's sitting back in 33rd right now, but 39 cars now have officially taken time for Indy Racing Images opening practice, which is good to see. I know last year we were averaging right around 35 to 40 each practice session, so good to see everybody out as Skylar Brown still making his revolutions around the racing surface.
And Baden, want to touch upon the real world to virtual aspect on that, because I've heard of many drivers both on social media and on the sim talk about this, where a green track is one that can in real life rip apart the tires and is hard to grip up to. Same can be said for in the sim, to where it feels better on the long run for the rubber in people's opinions. What's kind of your take on that from the real world to the virtual side, as you do race in real life and also actually made one time an Arkham Menard series start over in Salem, your hometown?
Yeah, I think they've done a good job of modeling it on iRacing here. We saw last year when we would have days that it rained. The next day the track would be fresh or fresher. It kind of depended on the amount of rain we got as opposed to the amount of rubber that was on the surface. We tried to make a good calculation there of what we needed as far as the amount of rubber content on the racing surface. But, they've done a good job of it. You saw last year when we had those rain days where you'd see guys get thrown a massive curveball. You saw where guys were getting real dialed in. They were getting close. The track would go green, and they'd be, they I wouldn't say struggling, but you saw in the opening hour or so of practice where guys were back to the drawing board trying to adjust and get a setup built for, okay, this is what it's going to do when the track goes green. Here's this amount of rubber on the surface. You saw guys having to adjust and chase that as well. There's a lot of variables with this that you do have to chase, but that's one that's really interesting to see because, again, I don't think you get to see enough of that in here. You get a live example of it when it rains in Indianapolis on here, and that's, we try to get this deal as realistic as we can and keep these curveballs coming, because that's how it is in real life. You might have the car just about perfect, rains, and you're trying to get back to that comfy spot you had found. So, always having that in the back of your mind and keeping people on their toes is something that's really interesting. And I think it's one of those fun parts of iRacing. It's really interesting to see the way that plays out on here.
Well, and we've been noticing that too on actually in one of our broadcasts before, guys in the sprint car world, the dirt sprint car world, we never paid attention to track temps, wind speeds, things like we never did. And then all of a sudden it was like, wait a minute, why aren't we? There's weather plays such an important factor in all this, and especially with this car, and especially at this racetrack. I know myself as I'm an Indianapolis 500 nerd. I love the Indianapolis Motor Speedway probably more than anything else on this planet, and she is an evil, evil, evil woman, and that's why I love her so much, because she is weather dependent. It's just like having a girlfriend with 37 personalities. You got to date them all, and you got to enjoy them all, and that's where Indy, I think is a pretty cool piece. It's, when the track's hot and slick, it's hard to get around here. When it's cold, we saw one day last year where it was track temps were only in the 60s or something like that, but the winds were howling at like 36 miles an hour, and it's just, that's Indy. That's what you have to deal with. So it's the car wise, I don't really think iRacing has changed too much on. But as far as the way that the tracks are, they've changed the way that they've changed the way that the heat works within the racetrack. And I think that's what we're really seeing here is, as we just saw on screen, Dan Zager's getting super tight behind I believe it's Stephen Hill. Super, super tight coming off the corner, where last year that wasn't the case. We could see the non-pack racing this year, depending on track temps. So it's going to be interesting to see how the track plays in. If it rained during this time period in history, it's all going to be very interesting. And those guys with the deep setup notes, those are the ones that are going to be really doing well, I think.
And I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because that was one of the more recent updates in the most recent build, is adjusting how the track heat builds up as cars turn around the racetrack. And the key thing, dirty air. And it's always been where, especially when dirty air has been in its biggest moments, guys, especially going towards you, Billy Gintz, and on this one, it can cause the car to really plow, and it's gone that direction again on stock car side of things. The open wheel side, it's been something that can be seen in various different types of cars, from road courses to ovals, because of that aero push in the corner.
Yeah, I don't know if any of you have ever tried to run the full-on the Dallara IndyCar around this place in traffic, and it's a nightmare. But talking with Connor Daly that runs the Indianapolis 500 in real life, he's like, dude, the dirty air it's incredible, and especially with the aero screen, it's even worse. And you don't realize how much off throttle time there is during the race, and I think that's one of the keys that a lot of these guys that didn't run the race last year, and the ones that did run the race last year, are having to reacclimate themselves to try to get back to, I can't run this thing wide open all the time. And especially last year, we saw guys, once the fuel load started getting lower and lower, once it got low, the car started getting really loose. And especially in traffic, where that front end would start getting, you'd be tucked behind somebody in a rhythm, and then all of a sudden you're in front of them. Now that front end is super stuck, and the car is going to start getting free on you. So there's a lot of learning aspects going into it, but that's one thing that I do think iRacing has done an extremely good job of. I know you see a lot of guys, in the Coke Series and in the A class and B class cars of NASCAR, upset about how these tracks race and things like that. And iRacing is adjusting the heat coefficients and the tire properties and all this sort of thing to try to make the racing not necessarily better, but make it more realistic to what we see now. And with this, obviously, we don't have something to base what real life is. But I think over the course of the way that the tracks wear in, you can definitely see a difference between 100-degree track temperature and 125-degree track temperature, as well as when you're in open air or tucked up behind somebody. So iRacing has done a fantastic job, I think. And right there, we just saw it. Tyson Landis got up behind Dan Zager's. Car starts getting tight, big lift.
And the aero side of this car is something that I do want to touch on, because it's really interesting with this car. Ground effects after this era was really short in motorsports, and it looks like with a lot of our top level series, we're starting to walk back towards ground effects. With this car, it seems like you can fight that aero push by using the ground effects. It's not as upset by that dirty air with the ground effects. But again, like everything with a setup, there's a trade-off there. Do you want to give up that speed for that stability in traffic? You know, chances are you're going to spend a lot of the race in traffic. So that stability very well may be worth the trade-off, but it's something really neat about this car that you can do to help yourself. And then, like we were talking about, when that fuel load starts to wear off, the CG of the car is changing, and then on top of all that, you're losing weight off the car because this car carries a lot of fuel. So you're seeing a change in ride height and a change in the underbody aero of the car. So I think those were all things that guys weren't fully able to replicate because you're losing some downforce as the car starts to pick up off the racetrack on top of old wore out tires. It was something that was hard to replicate last year, but the guys that ran it are going to have those notes, and those are going to be hugely important. But that's one of the interesting things about this car that I think makes it cool around here. You know, you have that option. It's a good trade-off, and I think it helps a lot.
Indeed. And was going to say as well, on top of things, I think you hit upon it better than you efficiently could, but for some, keep in mind, with the stock car side, it took a lot of changes of driving style for people when the current package on that side for the cup cars came into play. Then when they changed tire model, inserted dirty air back in, it was like back and forth to try to revert back, and some people just struggle with that back and forth with that, and that's the importance of adaptability. You mentioned the laps. This is why it's so key. There's drivers who have turned more than 150 laps in this session, keep in mind, so far tonight, just about. The highest right now is 140 by Dallas Breeze, believe, 138 by James Tiernan. Those laps matter. You don't put in those laps, it can be difficult to know how the car's going to react.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's one of those keys that we were talking about is, you know, figuring out what this car is going to do on low fuel. Because a lot of guys last year, they didn't run them on very low fuel on old tires. So it's one of those where you really have to get used to it, and you have to figure out what your car is going to do, what it likes, what it doesn't like. You know, to hear guys almost running a full race distance on the opening day of practice, that's pretty cool. That to me is pretty cool.
How do you balance that fatigue at the same time? Because I've heard great things about doing that. There's people who want to mention taking 1,000 laps. Then there's others who have spoken to. Christian Challenger is the person I'm thinking about the most on this point. Is you don't want to fatigue yourself by running the entire race like an hour before, like some drivers could.
Well, and we've talked about that a lot privately, you know, within our team about, you know, with the Pro Series, like for the World of Outlaw Pro Series, you know, for example, we've got 6 or 7 guys that are in the Pro Series, and, you know, Zane is one of those that he's like, nope, I'll practice on Monday, and that's it. And then you've got other guys, you know, Tyler Schell and even, you know, Dustin Griffiths, they like to get a lot of practice in. Myself personally, I found that I ran better when I didn't practice that much, because it was kind of almost, you get in a rut, you get in a groove of, I've never been a good qualifier. I've always been a better racer than a qualifier, and I think if you're turning practice laps and they're quality practice laps where you're always learning something, that's important. But when you're just out turning laps to turn laps, that's when it starts being unproductive. You know, you run a lot more asphalt than I do on the sim, and you're actually a pretty darn good oval guy, Justin. What is your mindset on that? Do you, you know, like for when NIS, I don't know if you run those, but myself and Baden, we run some NIS races, and there's been times one of my favorite ones ever was we ran a race at Dover for NIS. We probably practiced for 6 to 7 hours. Building a set for that, and it was just repetition, and it paid off. But then we go into a place like Martinsville where it's more my comfort zone. We run 50 or 100 laps early, we go out and win the race. So there's always that fine balance of what you need and what your enjoyment level is. But like, what do you do when you're preparing for those NIS races and things like that?
Lots of races is one of them, and repetition is the one key major thing for a lot of the big teams, because it's different from team to team, including in this race, mind you, and through this practice. There's different approaches to, okay, I want you to run a 20-lap run or a 30-lap run. Let's run a 50-lap run, depending on the racetrack. Okay, I want to know what the full fuel run is. Keep track of the tire wear. Keep track of the tire heat. Keep tweaking. Try every single variation. There's the reason for the repetition mentioned there is the big teams require it. You don't put in those times and put in that amount of effort, there's people that are looking at you thinking, okay, who can we bring in to replace you on that side?
Well, and that's something that I've always found that's very intriguing to me. A lot of us come from real racing backgrounds to where you don't go and practice 10,000 laps in a week, but you look at a guy really any of the peak drivers, the Coca-Cola's drivers, they're basically full-time iRacers at this point, because you have to be. And there's some people that give flack for that, but at the same time, it's, if you're going to be the best, you have to practice, and you have to put the laps in, and you have to put the time in. And those guys, I honestly could not imagine just running laps around Pocono for fun. I just couldn't do it. But when you look at it from the grand scheme of things, even on the World of Outlaws side of it, Alex Bergeron has said multiple times he runs 35 to 40 hours of practice a week, not including races. So it is important to do, and that's why, for races like this, to where it's a car that you don't normally drive, and definitely at a track that it's not built for, really. I'm sure Colin Chapman is looking down from us from above going, this is awesome, but
I sure hope so.
And if not, something's wrong. But
yeah, we got to quit if not. But.
Yeah, but you're taking a car that's nobody really runs at a track that nobody runs this car at. I know the Lionheart Series does run a fixed series race here, once or twice a season. But from the grand scheme of how all this stuff is playing out, really, we've got 3 hours of practice today, 3 hours tomorrow, and 3 hours Thursday. Then we're going into the holiday weekend where we don't have anything going on until Saturday qualifying. By the time that it's all shaken out, if you're not really paying attention, 9 hours seems like a lot, but if you're sitting back in, 34th to 40th right now on the charts and you're not really comfortable, that's not a lot of time.
Just about out of time on the board as well for the Indy Racing Images opening practice. We have time to speak with one more driver and see how his organization's been doing. Billy Bowerman now joins us in the broadcast booth. Billy, do you have a copy?
Absolutely, sir. Yes, I do.
Billy currently 19th, making 20th now on the board so far throughout the opening practice. How are you feeling about you and your team's efforts so far?
We're just really testing. I've tried about 15, 20 setups at this time, and it's a slow process since the track's green, and everybody's looks like they're doing well out there. So just trying to get some laps on the track, but get something that kind of is easier to drive right now, and then we can go from there.
Yes, the Soda King Special is the organization you meant. Now, what are some of the things you've discussed to try and go towards the direction without giving away the secrets?
Well, right now it's just Clint Stone and Tyler Street right now. We're just kind of working on something. We're kind of new at all this, so it's just a fresh, people that are just kind of getting into this since last year. So we're learning. We just try to make tire changes, whatever, nothing special that the fast guys don't know what to do. Sway bars and stuff. So we're just trying to get a handle so the car doesn't push off the track and then it doesn't oversteer, and then when you get in a little bit of traffic, we're trying to keep it from pushing also. So really, we're just trying a little bit of everything. We're not really gone out there and ran 4 or 5 or 6 laps in a row. We've just ran a 1 or 2 laps, and we usually crash out. You know, my car owner said if I get 100 instances, he'll buy me a new car. So it looks like he's going to buy me a new car because I'm probably maxed to 100 already.
Congratulations on the new car, but I have to ask, why Sofa King, rather the team you guys have chosen, Sofa King Fast Sim Sport?
You know, that's something that I just joined when I first got started in the middle of last year, beginning of last year, about March, April, and I don't really know the background of it. I think it's kind of, I think it's something that's not, you know, it's a triple X maybe.
Later on in the week, I'm sure we'll get Billy Brickley in here, and that'll explain everything right off the bat.
Yeah, I'm not one to say it or mention it because I don't know what the hidden secret is, but I don't want to say nothing and make the team look like it's a bad team. But you know, it's a funny one, I'm sure. All I do is like it because it's got a reclining chair, and that's all I care about.
I don't get the reason for it. I'll find out after. But
you talk to Dave Ward or Billy Brickley, and they got the scoop behind it. You know, yeah, it's a triple X movement, I'm sure.
Okay, on that, let's move away from the triple X movement and move towards how the car is going. You know, overall, basically, how do you feel about this very hot track? You mentioned the greenness of the track, trying to fight the heat of it. How do you feel overall about the heat of said track and the potential, of course, of, like real world, weather can change in real life from day to day, the potential adaptability your car could have?
Well, what we're trying to do right now, you know, we could run some 47 4s and 5s pretty much if we really wanted to right now on a regular, you know, it's not the quick of 47 O's that some of these guys are running, Theron and all those guys, but you know, it's comfortable, but you know, you always try to go to that next level to try to get it to go another 10th and another 10th. So I think if we work on this setup with the track being 120-25, which is pretty hot for a race, but again, you know, it's racing, so you know, we have to adapt to the track and make sure we know the proper changes of the race car. So I think if this is something that we're working on right now with this heat, we could put this setup, put it to a side, and then work on that a little bit more. And then the next practice session for the fake 500, we can see what the weather temp there. If it's not the same, I'm not sure. I haven't really read that much if they're going to do the same or if it's going to change. But really, all you can do is put your setups that you're creating with the track temp right now and put it to a side. Not that it's not any good or not that it's really good, but you know, put it to a side and work on the next chapter of the next practice session and tweak that setup to the next practice session and then start another new setup if that's not working what you want.
Was going to say, what's the focus now going to be since we're in the closing stages now with 6 minutes? Lots of time put in by you and your respective drivers in terms of data, in terms of lap times. Where's the focus now go on for the next day in the practice session, specifically the Brent Marks Racing Sim Team Practice tomorrow?
I think what we're going to do is I think we're going to actually try to work on getting the car to handle easy to drive, but on the loose side, because always loose is a little faster. So I think if we get the car to just maybe get a little bit loose and not so tight, and then maybe work on some speed later on in the later practice sessions, you know, try to get the car to handle and then get some speed on it from there. So, you know, I'm optimistic. I think it's always, you know, it's like any race car driver, I would think, you know, you don't qualify too well, you don't practice well, but then you do great in the mains. You do great in the main, and your practice session and all that other stuff, you know, wasn't worth a darn. So optimistic all the time. So just try to work on a little bit of more easy car to drive, but on the loose end a little bit, and then work on some speed.
Absolutely in this one. And guys, your thoughts on Billy's thoughts? Billy, anything you'd like to add?
Billy Bowerman's one of my favorite people. I've said that for a very long time. He has some great Chet Christner one-liners when he's announcing some UDSS races, and I miss those days, Billy. We need to get back to those. I need to have you calling me crashing again in a UDSS racer soon.
Nothing's like that. I mean, I felt so sorry for you for a lot of races because you were doing so good, but you got taken out by everybody, including the bathroom, kitchen, sink from the grandstands. I mean, but I hope to be back and play a lot of fast pitch baseball around the country, so that keeps me occupied. But I think what we need to work on here now is just get a little bit more speed, and I can't thank Elbows enough and the whole crew and announcing crew, and I'll get all the sponsors down here soon, so if you ever interview me, I'll have them written down. But I can't thank you guys enough for making the Fake 500 probably one of the best sim races around on sim racing and on broadcasting, because you guys do a fantastic job like no other. You guys are the best, and what you guys do for us really makes it enjoyable and makes it fun. It's a little bit miserable being a driver because you can't be as fast as you want to be, but that's racing. You got to put in your time, and a lot of these guys put in their time because they've been around it. So all we can try to do is match them. So I thank you very much for hosting the race, putting it on broadcast, doing all your hard work. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for coming, Billy. We do appreciate it. And when Brickley gets here, we'll make sure that he knows we're making him do an interview. He's going to actually have to talk this year.
Well, I like that, and thank you guys very much. Thank everybody, the whole Elbows Up crew, and hopefully next time you talk to me, I'll be higher than the 22nd in practice session.
Well, good luck the rest of the week, buddy.
Thank you very much, guys. Have a good night.
Billy Bowerman currently on the board now, as he mentioned, 22nd as Dallas Breeze in the closing stages of the session tied Tyson Landis in lap time of 47.126, dead even on that mark in speed. That's a 190.997 on the speed radar. Now,
which is very, very interesting that he's picked up that much speed. Even with, obviously with the tow, but with the track temp as high as it is, that's a very good sign for the rest of the week.
He's figured out how to use everybody else's speed bits. That's what's going on. Where he's pulling speed bits off torn up race cars. That's one of my favorite schemes.
That was Dallas's last year. Every single practice, he'd go find a rear wing from somebody, and it would be painted a different color, and nose wings and all that sort of stuff. So Dallas does a good job and has a lot of fun with it.
Absolutely. On that note, there's a few more minutes left to go in practice, 2 minutes total. Your thoughts over on how this session went, in your opinion? Baden, Stork, go to you first.
I think it's been really interesting. I think we've seen some big gains. We saw things calm down towards the end. Guys getting back in the rhythm, getting cars dialed in. This is going to be interesting. I'm not sure what we're going to see temp-wise from here on out. I think this has been really interesting. I think this is, so far in this little experiment of ours, the highest I think we've seen the track temp. Zane, Billy, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think
this is definitely the highest we've ever seen it.
Yeah, I think last year during qualifying it got to like 116, 117, but I don't think it ever got over 125, and today it's been over that a little bit.
It's been really, really interesting to see how this has transpired. Guys chase that temp and get dialed in. We've seen a lot more happy cars towards the end. I think we're going to see a lot more of this. And, these guys are going to be putting this one back in their notebook as, their high track temp set. Stuff like that is really interesting to me. I really, really enjoy watching guys chase this stuff and constantly have to be adapting. This is just a taste of what we're going to get. And I'm really excited about it. This has been really promising, and I think we're in for something really cool again this year.
Yeah.
Your quick thoughts, Billy.
Completely agree. We got about 30 seconds left in this session, and so guys getting their final times in, and no real surprises to me up at the top of the board. To everybody that's in the top 10, I think has shown speed. Our buddy Chris Peterson still sticking around in the top 10 and 7th at a 47.1. So, these guys are all they're all right there, and like Keith Jeffrey said earlier, he's not worried about it sitting back in the 30s. So, as it looks like Mike Rasmus is going to be the one as the gun is going off. Practice officially over. First round for the Indy Racing Images opening practice is over for the Wicked Energy Gun Fake 500. I'm pumped for the rest of the week now.
Gonna be good.
I'm absolutely pumped.
Some great preparation, some great laps. Absolutely pumped myself. And as these drivers make their way down the cool-down laps, Zane Scott, you've been up in race control throughout all this and listening in and joining in here and there throughout the evening. Your thoughts here on what was a very productive first practice for some of these teams?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, knowing what we know up here in race control, there's definitely a couple things that are eye-opening. We're talking about it here in the press box chat. We're not going to say it over the announcement, but as I double down on what I had mentioned, it's actually more of a curious case now. But they're gonna be tough for these guys. I think a lot of them are going to be in for kind of a whirlwind of emotions, a whirlwind of speeds. I think one day they're going to feel fast, the next day they're not going to. And again, using that race control power, knowing what I know. One day of practice is not going to be enough for these guys. They're going to have to come back out here, tomorrow and maybe Thursday to really get these cars down pat, find the speed they're going to need, and then they're going to have to come out here on the 2 qualification days with the knowledge that they've gained, and hope that they can put on a good lap. And as we speak about qualifying here, I'm currently getting ready to send the list through the order generator, or get that list sent over to Billy here so we can get this list. We're going to draw the qualifying order for pole day right here on broadcast, pretty much for everyone to see. That way there are no gimmicks. We're not pulling any gimmicks here. We're not giving anyone any favorites in this draw. So I am going to work on that and get that sent over here so we can get that taken care of.
Yeah, I'm going to get my screen prepped here for that. It's been, your thoughts, actually, Justin. What your first experience with the Fake 500 so far, at least as part of the crew? Thoughts and what are you looking for towards the end of the week?
I'm looking forward to seeing some great racing, which may sound like an obvious answer, but it's looking like it could be a great race with some of these competitors. They've been practicing a lot on the draft. They've been getting used to racing against one another. They've been very competitive with one another and how they've all played this out. It's been fun to completely watch throughout all this to see how things have played out, especially throughout this practice. Real quick, we want to mention that top 10. Once again, James Tiernan, Skylar Brown, TJ Majors, the top 3 separated by just about 0.2 of a second overall. And the speed difference, only about 1 mile an hour. Dallas Breeze, Tyson Landis, the top 5. Zegers, Peterson, Bodio, Silver, Rasmus, rounding out the top 10 in this one. It was competitive. And I think it's going to be very competitive, guys, for this one. And you mentioned that qualifying order. That could be beneficial and crucial for some of these drivers to make sure they get, or hope they get, rather, a good spot in that order to make sure they're going to have a track condition that's preferable potentially to them, while others, they're going to have to buckle up and hope that the track plays the best for them. It depends really on the weather, though, too, on where their draw lies and where the weather lies at the time of the draw.
Yeah, and we're going into right now the draw itself that we were talking about here, just so that way everybody can see. There's no funny business going on.
Don't run it just yet. Just give me 1 second.
Okay.
Currently in the midst of that right now.
I want to get this shared to our drivers. That way they can watch this.
Good call. Good call.
I already know at least a few of the drivers are watching along and curious on this pole day draw, and it's going to be a big-time pole day, mind you. We mentioned how bump they played, and we mentioned the pole time decided last year by 1/1000 of a second was Parker Klugerman over James Tiernan, then Tyson Landis in that front row. Brown, Zegers, Grafton was row 2 at the time. Landon Castle, Kevin Hamlin, TJ Majors rounding out the top 9 drivers. Qualifying was tight among those drivers, separated by about 1/10 of a mile an hour, just about, from your pole time to the end of the top 6, and separated by 0.3 to the top 9. So in
Yeah.
other words, those times are going to be flying.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And last year we saw that you needed to basically, if you went out super late, you were in trouble, or super early, you were in great shape. So the randomized draw is a big thing. And while Zane's getting a few more things set up or making sure that we got this out to as many people as possible that are in the field, just kind of going through and scrolling through. This is your qualifying order, drivers, or an order by just literally name. So when we go to randomize it, whatever we randomize it, that's going to be that is going to be the listing there. And make sure to the drivers out there, check your rule book to see how that's going to proceed this year. So going to have a little bit more of an open qualifying period this year after all things are said and done. So going to be a very interesting qualifying period coming up on Saturday and Sunday. For the run to the pole. So whenever Zane is ready, he will let us know, and we will get this thing randomized and get you guys out of here for the night, so you guys know exactly when you guys will be qualifying. So,
All right. Yeah, I got one request here. Can you, by any chance, take another window and have it dragged over like the middle of the screen? That way when you randomize it, it doesn't show everyone automatically, so we can kind of run down it and add a little bit of surprise to this.
Yeah.
So you just gotta basically get another like tab open, make it its own window, and then just be ready to click and open it up as soon as you hit randomize.
Yeah, I think I can do that because it'll show up right in the.
It'll show up kind of right in the middle of the screen when I just did mine.
Yeah, we'll do our best. We'll do our best. So
I'm gonna have to drag it up just a little bit. That way it covers kind of a majority of the.
Here, we'll just do one of those numbers. Alrighty, and we're randomizing on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. So it has been randomized. So this is the way that it's going to be. Your number 1 qualifier, Tyler Street, will roll off first on Saturday. So he will be the first qualifier to take time with, oh boy, the first man on track today, Mr. Chris Peterson.
Oh, that's good for him.
The dream's coming true for Chris Peterson. He said it in his interview. He wanted the early draw, and he's going to get it.
Yeah, and he's going to get it. Lance Sponberg, who we did not see today, but we did see him in the qualifying race, so he will roll off third. Joshua Chin. There's a man that's going to make a run for the pole. Former iRacing Indy 500 champion, as well as many other disciplines throughout. Mr. Billy Brickley, though, from the Sofa King Simsport team, he will roll off in the 5th spot. Chase Rowdeman, again, he's going to be, I think his stock keeps continuing to rise as he will roll off 6th on Saturday. Dustin Griffiths with a really good draw, the Elbows Up Simsport driver for Crescent Donuts. He will be rolling off in 7th. Oh boy, the world's tallest sprint car driver, Kyle May, rolls off in the 8th spot with Dallas Breeze in the 9th spot right behind him. Bryce Bailey, who was he was a bullet last year. He rolled off here 10th. He'll roll off 10th this year. Barry Foster, we did not see him today in practice as well, but we did see him quite a bit last year, so he will be rolling off 11th on Saturday. Kyle Sosnowski was super quick all last year. He will go off in the 12th position. Ryan Broderick, the brother of Mark Broderick, he will roll off in 13th. Hank Hi-Ho Silver rolls off in the 14th spot, so that's a great qualifying spot for him. Anthony Carini, another one of the Dirt Vision drivers, he rolls off in the 15th position for qualifying on Saturday. James Tiernan with a good draw, he will roll off in 16th. Brendan Cooper, he will roll off in 17th. Adam Plunkett, Michael Klein, and Braden McMahon round out the top 20. So that is your top 20, as we'll kind of do a little bit of a different... let me get these copied here before and pasted in so that way we don't lose them. Even though it's on stream, we can go back. We'll do a couple notables. Bradley Walters, Nick Nichols, Rylan Gray, Dan Lindsay. TJ Majors right in the middle, so that's 25th, so that's going to be tough for him. Rasmus, who ran really well last year. Juan Ruiz, we talked about him from Chile. He will be rolling off in the 29th position. Kevin Click, your former winner, your inaugural winner, he will roll off in 32nd. Tyler Kendall, I would say Tyler Kendall won the Jigger Soroyce Award last year.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So he will roll off in 31st, and then Carl Burke, another rookie who showed some good speed today, he will roll off in the 33rd spot. Miles Jansen, Clint Stone, Stephen Hill. Landon Castle rolls off a little bit late, 38th spot with Brian Blackford. Dude, there is some hitters in the back of this.
Oh, boy.
Landon Castle, extremely quick last year. Brian Blackford. Adam Blocker, I know we talked about him just a little bit. He will be rolling off in the 44th spot. He'll be pretty fast as well. Billy Bowerman and Skylar Brown both back there in the 50 and 51st spots, with Tyson Landis in the 52nd spot. So really the back half of this is absolutely packed. Aaron Ralph's another rough qualifying draw for him, but and then Dan Zagers picking up the 59th spot. And the reason that there's 59 spots is we did have somebody on the list that needed to qualify as late as humanly possible. So what we did in all fairness was said the only way that we can do it is you got to be taken out of the qualifying draw and you got to qualify 60th. So that person will qualify in the 60th spot. But Dan Zagers, the last car to qualify according to the sheets. So definitely a wild qualifying order as we're going to see on Saturday.
Kind of a reverse of what we saw last year. Last year, we saw a lot of the heavy hitters kind of go out early. I mean, Parker Kligerman, Landon Castle, Brian Blackford, James Tiernan, all those guys had top 20 draws. I mean, really top 10 almost. So this year it's kind of reversed. We're going to see Joshua Chin go out there early. I think that if we have an eyes on a pole run in the first 30 cars, I think it's going to be Joshua Chin in the fourth spot. And then kind of look down the list. You got Rodman in 6th. That's going to be interesting to see. Kyle Sosnowski 12th. Kyle Sosnowski's kind of becoming a storyline for the Fake 500, and it's not for just being the fastest guy out there or anything, but we're gonna allude to it here because I think every good race has a hero versus villain storyline. Kyle Sosnowski's kind of taking on the villain role of the Fake 500. We know that James Tiernan slightly upset about how last year's race finished. We saw Hank Silver get unfortunate, had contact with Sosnowski in rookie orientation on lap whatever it was. Sosnowski's kind of branded himself as the villain of sorts of the Fake 500. So going on the 12th spot for him could be interesting to see. And then you look third on the list, TJ Majors in 25th. Bradley Walters, a guy that's got a lot of speed. He'll be in 21st. And then you hit like the 30th car out there, Christopher Tate, everyone behind him. I mean, that's a stacked 10-car stint right there. Tyler Kendall, last year's champion, Kevin Click, Yari Brubacher, Landon Castle, Brian Blackford, and then you have Jeremy Zarfos at 41st. And then you have 43rd and 44th, Dave Bodio, Adam Blocker, and then we rounded out with that final 10 cars there. You have last year's front row starter Tyson Landis, Michael Cozy Jr., however you want to say that. He was the third pick in the driver's vote for rookie favorites.
Yeah.
So he's going to go out there in 54th. Aaron Roofs, 55th. And then Keith Jeffrey, we talked to him. He's going to go out 57th. Mark Broderick had speed last year, 58th. And then Dan Zagers, 59th. So, I mean, this field it's stretched. There's talent all the way through this. It's definitely, I would say, back half loaded. But, I mean, I think right now, if I had to give one guy that's going to go out and put the most entertaining run up, I'm going to go Joshua Chin.
Yeah,
he could this year lock himself in pole day and not have to do what he did last year, which was lock himself in on bump day in the final 15 minutes.
Yeah, this is going to be a very interesting dynamic now. Is where Tyler Street says first for qualifying, who's going to be crapping bricks. That'll be him, and then Skylar Brown screams blasphemy. He wants a redo because he wasn't watching, and that's not going to happen, Skylar. But It's
This is going to be a VOD. You can go back and watch it anytime.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, you're allowed to go back and rewatch it. There was no shenanigans or anything like that. It just this is Indy. This is just how it works. So we're just gonna have to see how the weather plays out. But boy, oh boy, ready for Saturday now. It's time to get after it and time to go.
My least favorite day of the year, and it's
Yes.
starting. We're starting it with the second day of the year. So I mean, take that how you want.
Yeah. It's a heck of a day, but it's a busy day for all of us. But man, oh man, we're gonna have a good time watching all these guys get qualified into the fake 500 or the Patriot 100. Just again, huge shout out to everybody that's been a part of this today. You guys are absolutely the best. You guys are putting on a heck of a show, and we really enjoy it. And yeah, I just can't wait for Brett Mark's sim team to practice day tomorrow now.
Absolutely. We're going to roll into day 2 of practice and, got that insider information. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And then a little note here for reference for the viewers currently watching. Saturday, if we have a car on track and in the chute for the entire 6 hours, we're going to have about 100 different qualifying attempts on pole day and bump day. So we could see 200 attempts, and that's going to set up a lot of drama. We had drama last year. We're going to have drama this year. And it's only day 1. A couple people said this year's Fake 500, it doesn't have the hype it had last year. This year seems to be down. This isn't what we thought it was going to be. And after the first day and what we've already saw, I think the inner channels are saying the hype is there. And I think that hype's just going to grow as this week goes on.
I think so too, guys. On that note, it's time to say goodnight. We'd like to thank you for tuning in once again for today's coverage of the Indy Racing Images opening practice for the 2nd annual Wicked Energy Gum Fake 500. For my co-broadcasters tonight, Zane Scott, your race control manager for next week's race, in action throughout this entire 2 weeks. Brandon Stewart, for Billy Rowley, who's also been in the director's seat. I'm Justin Prince, saying so long. Enjoy the rest of your night. We'll see you tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, for Brett Marks Racing Sim Team Practice. Once again, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Be sure to tune in for the second practice night of the week. Stay tuned.